Hey, Wizardian. Welcome back to another banger video. What if Deku was Dr. Manhattan, this movie? If you find this video interesting, please leave a like, share and subscribe. This helps me to upload more, and I have uploaded Deku Got Starfire's kitty cat on my Patreon fully uncensored and spicy, so do check out. Now let's jump right into the video. It is 3:02 p.m. on a Tuesday, and Izuku Midoriya is learning how to be blue. It is 3:02 p.m. on a Tuesday, and his mother is at a kitchen table stirring soup that will never be eaten warm. A ceramic bowl waits for him beside a crooked spoon, and the television talks about heroes like it does when no one is looking. It is 3:02 p.m. on a Tuesday, and somewhere inside a glass cylinder at Detmerit's Tokyo Research Annex, an intrinsic field nullifier hums like a throat clearing before bad news. Time, to Izuku, is still a road with signs and distance markers. He knows where he is on it. High school second year, quirkless on paper, notebooks full of other people's power like pressed flowers. He is here because Aldera's science club won a lottery to tour a place that claims it builds safety for quirks by learning how to unmake accidents. It is a dull phrase until the light arrives. The technician smiles. The glass fogs. Someone shouts that the test field is ramping too fast. Izuku is inside a sphere of equations he'll never read with his eyes. The world strips down into parts. Carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, water's patient geometry. He wants to step back. He is heat without temperature, outline without interior. He thinks because thoughts are what last that heroes would be calm right now, and he tries to be calm like them. The nullifier burps a sound that isn't a sound. The light learns to write his name down to the proton. Then there is nothing to stand in. The pen clatters to the floor. Someone screams. The sphere empties. It is still 3:02 p.m. on a Tuesday, and Izuku Midoriya is learning how to be blue by first learning how not to be at all. Later, there will be reports and a dozen apologies, a dozen more excuses. Later, there will be arrests and quiet phone calls, and the fearful certainty of civil suits. Right now, there is only an empty chamber, and the outline of a boy burned into the observation team's retinas, and the air's stubborn refusal to remember anything that isn't air. And then, on a Thursday, a nervous pair of electrons remember him. On Sunday, a nervous city sees a ghost of light walking down the middle of a closed arcade, rain passing through him. Cameras capture a smear of cobalt, and a pair of eyes surprised to discover they are not required for seeing. By Friday, he remembers an address and rearranges the door to open without a knob. Inko Midoriya drops the spoon. She does not scream. She does not faint. She steps forward and puts her hand on the chest of a boy who is a constellation. Her palm warms without touching. The boy blinks in a way that is mainly kindness. "It's me," he says in a voice that arrives everywhere in the room at once. "Mom. I am not sure how long it has been for me, but I think for you it is still. Dinner." He looks at the cold soup. The spoon. The television that won't learn to shut up. He is smiling because he wants her to know that some things do not have to be frightening. She hugs him anyway. Her arms pass partly through his shoulder, and the fabric of his shirt, if that's what the blue field chooses to be called, decides to simulate the friction of cotton, the weight of sweat, and the little catch of a breath before tears. It is 6:41 p.m. on a Friday, and Izuku Midoriya is here and everywhere else. He is not a god. He is a good boy who has become a very large answer to a question Tokyo did not mean to ask. He plans to use it wisely. Chapter 1: The Room Without Air. The press conference happens because the world insists on turning surprise into a schedule. UA offers the auditorium as a neutral space. Detmerit signs papers with trembling hands. The commission sends 3 officials with smiles that could cut glass. A podium appears on stage. Cameras cluster like pigeons that learned aggression pays better than breadcrumbs. Izuku stands in the wings because standing is a thing that reassures people. He can be taller or smaller, brighter or dimmer. He chooses something close to the boy he was. Curly hair that now glows as if each strand remembers a tiny star, freckles reproduced as points of soft light instead of pigment, a gym uniform remade in cobalt that refuses seams. Shoes. He generates soles so the floor won't feel cold. All Might appears beside him, shorter than the posters and windier in the smile. Toshinori Yagi's eyes find him with the practiced empathy of a man who has watched too many children almost die in too many ways. "You don't need to do this," All Might says softly. Izuku can see the man's ribs knit between words. He could arrange them into perfect lattices. He doesn't. "If I don't," Izuku replies, "everyone else will. I want to explain it myself." "You're a kid." "I was." The older man's breath catches, then steadies. "You saved your mother's sanity by walking through her front door. That's good enough for any hero in the room." He tips his head toward the stage. "But if you choose the mic, choose it for you." Izuku steps forward. He is learning how to time footsteps so the sound arrives in the right order. The stage lights warm. The room inhales and forgets how to exhale. He sees Achako in the third row, hands clenched into bright promise. Iida in the aisle, posture like a well-organized filing cabinet. Bakugo standing in the back because sitting is for people who haven't exploded lately. Good afternoon, Izuku says, and the microphones do not feed back because he decided they won't. I am Izuku Midoriya. I used to be a student at Aldera. I was in an accident at Detnerit's research annex. He feels the ripple of lawyers perking up. This is not Detnerit's statement. It is mine. He explains the nullifier in terms that do not frighten middle schoolers. He explains disassembly without using the words death or afterlife or miracle. He explains that he can see many things at once, but he chooses not to see what people don't want seen. He explains that he does not intend to be a hero because he can do more than hero work and less than human work and he would rather try both responsibly. In short, he says, I am still me. I want to help. I will listen. He looks at his mother in the front row and adds, and I will be home for dinner. The commission asks for tests. Detnerit asks for forgiveness. All Might asks, later, for tea. The world asks for more than anyone can safely give. The first room UA offers him is stripped bare in deference to the rumor that matter and he are not on speaking terms. Izuku agrees because it helps them sleep. He doesn't need a bed. He can be the bed. He builds one anyway so that Achako's face stops doing that worried tilt when she peeks in. This is fine, he says to Aizawa during inspection, choosing a voice that carries mildness like a language. The homeroom teacher watches him without blinking and, paradoxically, without sleep. The capture scarf twitches as if it recognizes something it can't bind. You're not a student of mine, Aizawa says, which is honest enough to count as comfort. But you're on my campus. Follow the rules. We don't have rules for you yet. That's inconvenient. I can follow the spirit until you write the letter, Izuku answers. Aizawa's mouth twitches. Cute. He nods toward the empty room. You good? Izuku looks at the window. There is a city a breath away, asking for miracles and small favors like clean water. There is a hospital 3 kilometers south with a neonatal unit short on incubator capacity. There are wires under Musatafu's streets that would love to be a little less confused. I'm good, he lies kindly. I'll be here. He is here. He is also at the hospital while no one is looking, arranging a dozen electrons so heat distributes a little more evenly and an overworked ventilator gains a reprieve. He is also in the substation, persuading a fuse to live its best life another day. He is home, in the kitchen, warming soup he can't drink because he promised. When he returns fully to the room, the air is stale. He notices because he is trying to notice things like that small human annoyances that mean you are alive. He is supposed to open windows for it. He doesn't. He speaks to the molecules themselves and they decide to be fresher. Show off, he tells no one in particular. The room smells like rain. He writes a note to himself on the wall with light. Rules. 1. Ask. 2. Explain. 3. Do the smallest thing that works first. He underlines number 3 twice. Bakugo shows up after curfew because rules are appetizing when they crunch. He is all edges and heat and the perpetual motion machine of self-respect that refuses to allow pity within 10 meters. So Bakugo says, eyeing the empty room. You're a glowstick that thinks. Izuku considers answering with quarks. He doesn't. He offers a chair that wasn't there a heartbeat ago. Bakugo scowls at the conjuration, sits anyway, and pretends a groan of satisfaction is a threat. You didn't tell me, Bakugo says, which is not fair but also not wrong. I didn't know, Izuku replies, which is perfectly true. Bakugo leans forward, elbows on knees. You gonna play hero? I'm going to play citizen. Hero work will happen near me sometimes. That's a yes with extra syllables. Izuku smiles. Kakin, I can make extra syllables for anything. Make one for don't blow up the gym again. I can make a policy. For a minute, it is middle school again, where all their fights were about the size of futures they were allowed to imagine. Bakugo's voice drops. You okay, nerd? Izuku looks at his hands, the way light leaks from them as if they are politely failing to hide. He thinks about the Tuesday that won't end and the Thursday he reassembled a heartbeat in a bus stop and the Sunday he learned stairs are optional. He thinks about his mother's hands and All Might's tired smile and Aizawa's honesty and Achako's gravity pulling him toward kindness even when he is weightless. I don't know what okay means anymore, he says. But I think I can make it happen for other people. That helps. Bakugo stands. He doesn't touch Izuku's shoulder because neither of them is that person yet. He does look him in the eyes like a promise. Then do it smart. Not big. Smart. I wrote that down, Izuku says, nodding at the wall. Bakugo snorts. Of course you did. The commission's tests begin in a room with no air by design. They seal a chamber with hard vacuum, embed cameras in corners, and ask him to step inside a space that resents breath. The scientist kind, anxious, hair like a question mark hands him a tablet with scenarios. Reconstitute a liter of water, she says. Then a liter of seawater. Then. If you can, a liter of water with the salts arranged to spell your name. We're testing precision. Okay, Izuku says. And we'd like to. Map your emissions. She flushes. Energy. Fields. You know. I know. Inside the chamber, silence is almost arrogant. He remembers being emptier than this. He remembers learning the difference between vacuum as a missing thing and vacuum as a kind of presence, a podium for numbers to make speeches from. He thinks water and arranges hydrogen and oxygen in a marriage certificate. The leader appears. He does it again, this time adding sodium and chloride and a long conversation of trace minerals that teach oceans to taste like home. On the third try, he sculpts the salts to spell Izuku in filament letters that dance at the surface tension. The scientist's voice crackles over the intercom. Beautiful, she says despite the commission official whispering about proprietary boundaries. Thank you, he says, and considers the void beside him. It is comfortable here. It is also dangerous. He could spend days in rooms like this that do not require hearts. He could forget what air is for. Next the intercom says, duplicate yourself. He hesitates. Is there a medical observer present to confirm I am not creating a person I might be ethically responsible for? There is a silence that indicates a meeting will later be scheduled around that sentence. For now, the scientist says carefully, limit the duplicate to a visible construct without independent intention. A puppet. That I can do. He writes light into shape. The copy of him is a sculpture that knows how to smile when he smiles, nod when he nods, lift a hand in a mirror wave. Not a person. A promise to be careful. Teleport to the far wall, the intercom says. He does not walk. He repaints himself 6 meters to the left. It is not movement so much as remembering to be elsewhere. Phase through the floor. He declines. There are cables there that will not enjoy company, he says. He kneels, places a hand on the metal, and invites the conduits into a safer arrangement. The room hums approval. He is being cautious because caution is the shape kindness takes when power forgets where it ends. He is being precise because precision is how you stay small in a world that has decided you are large. When they open the chamber, the scientist meets him with eyes bright enough to be their own instruments. How do you feel? Hungry, he lies, because it is the human answer and she is braced for something alien. She laughs. She doesn't ask if he actually eats. He is grateful. Later, he sits in his empty room that is not empty and writes more rules. 4. If someone can do a thing, let them. 5. If I can do it faster, ask if faster is better. 6. If I think I know the future, consider how heavy that knowledge is before I hand it to anyone. He underlines number 6 3 times. He tries to sleep. He doesn't need to. He tries anyway because sleep is an art and he wants to practice being human where art still matters. At 2:11 a.m., Achako knocks softly. He knows it's her before the sound forms. He still waits for the sound to be polite. She peeks in, cheeks pink, hair a little chaotic like physics that got curious. Hey, she whispers. Can't sleep. I'm practicing, he whispers back. I'm not good at it. She steps inside. You don't mind? No. He makes a second chair, more real than the first, because he is learning comfort like a science. She sits. Her eyes travel the blankness. It's weird. You could have anything, and you choose nothing. I don't want the room to forget it's a room. She smiles, and it is gravity, and he falls toward it without mass. I'm glad you're still. You. He wants to say something elegant about identity as a vector sum of kindnesses. He says, me too. They talk about small things for a long time. They do not touch. They do not make promises. They practice being kids in a world that asks them to memorize adulthood before the test. When she leaves, he feels the air remember laughter and decides that is the most important experiment he ran all day. The first real emergency is stupid, which is how many real emergencies arrive. A construction crane near Dagaba Beach tries to taste the sky and bites the wrong cloud. The bay slips. The boom leans. The city leans with it in that way humans have when they think running will matter in the 40 meters before metal remembers gravity. There are heroes on scene, good ones, and they begin the choreography they practiced. Cordon, catch, calm. Izuku appears not in costume but in presence. The foreman screams about cost. A mother screams about a stroller under a scaffolding shadow. A rookie hero screams internally about how to make his quirk big enough to be a bridge. Izuku breathes. The bolts decide to like their jobs. The ground becomes briefly less treacherous. The crane chooses not to fall in the way that breaks bones. The stroller rolls back like a tiny miracle that owes everyone a thank you card. He could have lifted the whole machine with a thought. He doesn't. He convinces the scene to want a safer outcome. The pro hero with whirring lenses for eyes salutes him in shock. That was subtle. Izuku nods. I'm trying subtle first. The mother clutches her child and sobs into his not shirt. He makes himself feel human warm for her. She pulls back, sees the blue, and laughs a short laugh like a cough. "Thank you," she says, and the word sits somewhere in him where food used to go. A journalist shouts a question about jurisdiction. A commission official arrives with a clipboard heavy enough to anchor a ship. Izuku smiles. He tells the crane thank you for listening. He vanishes. In the empty air where he was, people argue about regulation and precedent. In the quiet of an unoccupied room, Izuku writes a new rule. 7. Save the thing. Explain the law later. He leaves the pen of light floating. It keeps writing. 8. Never forget that this was supposed to be someone else's job first. Help them do it better. He sleeps, briefly, because he has earned the right to pretend. Outside, the world rehearses its next problem. It will not be ready, but it will happen on schedule. Somewhere in a room that smells like old latex gloves and newer ambition, a man in a delicate suit closes a case that contains something that was once a quirk and is now hunger. He listens to the news about a blue boy fixing cranes and decides he does not like how Tuesday is going. He places the case next to another case. He names the project Chronophage because appetites are truth tellers when you let them. Eat tomorrow, he tells it. Leave me today. The case hums a reply that is not a word but arrives like a promise. Izuku, asleep and learning, doesn't hear it. Not yet. He will. Izuku learns that seconds are rooms. Some have doors, most have windows, a few are just chalk lines you step over and only later realize you've left something behind. He tries to live in the rooms that other people recognize. The second where the kettle whistles, the minute where the phone rings, the hour where homework gets done. He can be in all of them, but it is better kinder to choose one at a time. He practices. He draws a metronome in the air with light and lets it click. He lets it be wrong on purpose, then right again, like breathing. The sound marks the border between before and after. The body he wears obeys the rhythm. When it clicks, he blinks. When it clicks twice, he swallows, even though swallowing is theater. He takes a pen, not a pen, a filament that remembers ink and sketches his outline on the dorm wall, an honest self-portrait. The boy is seen by the room. The chalk-light lines hover for a moment, then settle into the plaster like a promise. He chooses freckles because he remembers counting them. He outlines elbows. He adds the curve of a shoulder that can be leaned on because he wants that to be true. He steps into the drawing. The drawing fits. When he walks, the floor creaks because houses like to be reminded they are useful. UA decides that love without fences is still a field. They call it a guardrail meeting because rules taste better with road metaphors. Nezu hosts, smile like a chessboard. Aizawa arrives with a sheaf of papers and a sleep deficit. Recovery girl sits like a quiet threat against anyone who forgets the human in humanitarian. The commission sends a woman with neat hair and a voice that assumes microphones. The degenerate people sit in the back as if chairs can double as shields. All Might is present, but only as Toshinori, Cardigan and Kindness. He takes notes by hand. Izuku sits, too. He is careful to make the chair groan under his weight. Nezu taps the table with a paw. Our goal. A framework that lets Mr. Midoriya do good without accidentally restructuring society before lunch. The commission rep smiles. We propose a tiered engagement model. Green for low-risk interventions, clean water, infrastructure stabilization, medical support alongside licensed professionals. Amber for acute incidents where lives are at risk but a scene commander is present. Mr. Midoriya acts under guidance. Red for existential threats. Mr. Midoriya acts on his discretion with post-incident review. Aizawa shuffles papers. Sign in and sign out procedures when he leaves campus, he says. No vanishing into the night without leaving a note. It helps me sleep. Also, a call tree. If he thinks he's about to do something dumb, he calls me first. Izuku raises a hand. Define dumb. Anything you wouldn't put on a poster, Aizawa says. Recovery girl clears her throat. And medical consent. If you intend to alter a body, even to heal, the person must understand and agree. Emergency exception when they cannot consent and death is imminent, but wherever possible, ask. It's already on my wall, Izuku says, and means it. Nezu's eyes gleam. There's also the small matter of time. The word lands with the heaviness of a thesis. Izuku feels the room take a breath it didn't know it was holding. The commission rep looks carefully neutral. We understand Mr. Midoriya perceives time non-linearly. I try very hard not to, Izuku replies. Or, rather, I sample, then choose not to remember what I cannot carry kindly. He meets recovery girl's gaze. I do not tell people their futures. Most futures are only heavy on delivery. Toshinori's pen stops. He nods, once. Nezu folds tiny paws together. Then we add a final rail. Temporal non-disclosure. If you believe you know what will happen, you treat it as a hypothesis. You test kindness first. You do not deny people the dignity of surprising you. Izuku adds it to his internal list. Accepted. Aizawa passes him a printed form titled UA Provisional Citizen Helper Agreement. The font is sensible. The subclauses are blunt. He signs with light. The signature bakes into the paper like a sunrise. Welcome to the rules, Aizawa says, deadpan. They're boring. That's why they work. Nezu claps. Practice continues. He sets up a small lab in a side room at the support course wing. Hatsume discovers him by the expedient method of walking into him at speed. Whoa. She says as her goggles bonk his not sternum. She leans back, grinning like a patent. Are you solid today or mostly a suggestion? I'm rehearsing solid, Izuku says, amused. Perfect. I have 3 ideas and a 4th that might get us both escorted out. She slaps a palm against a crate. Field dampers that keep your local emissions from scrambling delicate electronics so you can visit pediatric wards without ventilators resetting. A glove that trains your tactile feedback, teach those fingers to report heat and pressure so gentle is repeatable across constructs. And a visible light modulator so you can be less blue on command. PR will stop having opinions. And the 4th. She beams. A suit that isn't a suit. A pattern seated into your field style layer. I call it costume. She wiggles her eyebrows. Get it? Costume, but you're doomed because you'll never want to wear anything else. I will consider the doom, he promises. A test. He approaches servers and watches the readouts. No spikes, no hiccups. He touches calibrated springs and learns how to feel compression instead of calculating it. He dials his glow down until his freckles are just freckles again. He likes all of it more than he expected. Constraint, properly fitted, is not a chain. It's a craft. He updates his wall. 9. Technology is a kindness multiplier. Partner with it. 0.10. If I can learn a skill instead of replacing it with power, learn it. The letters look good next to each other. The glitch announces itself with 5 seconds of nonsense at a Shoto Avenue crosswalk. Izuku is walking, not teleporting, because walking is participatory when the air around him decides to disagree with cause and effect. He hears a laugh before the joke. A traffic light goes red, yellow, green, like a teacher grading backward. A girl in a yellow hat steps off the curb and then is still on the curb and then is in the street again, stuttering like a scratch disc. Pedestrians freeze the way people do when their brains notice they are not, in fact, the bosses of their reality. Izuku feels it somewhere deeper than bones. Not a future memory. Not his. A bite. An absence shaped like hunger. He does not shout. He doesn't have to. He moves. No, he decides to have moved, placing himself in the yellow hat girl in the second after the truck's brakes squeal successfully. He does it with minimum intervention. A nudge to the rubber's friction, a whisper to the driver's foot to be a fraction more impatient with the brake pedal. For the girl, he chooses probability. The shoelace that would have tripped her chooses not to. The world reknits. The light behaves. The sounds arrive in order again, sheepish. The girl looks up at him, eyes wide. Mr. Blue? Just Izuku, he says gently. Careful, okay? Okay. She runs back to her mother, who is staring at the sky as if checking for loose screws. People murmur. A man with an expensive watch glances at it as if the dial might confess. Somewhere, a security camera rewinds, then plays, then rewinds again without anyone pressing a button. Izuku lingers. He listens for echoes. The 5 seconds don't come back. On a nearby building, reflective glass throws his outline back at him. Chalklight boy, blue stitched to daylight. He lets the reflection hold his gaze while he speaks very softly to the street, to the air, to the shape of the bite. I see you, he says. It is not a threat. It is an invitation to be understood. Nothing answers. The silence, however, has edges. He files the sensation in the drawer labeled do not ignore. He finds Aizawa on the roof, drinking coffee that tastes like stubbornness. Glitch? Aizawa asks without preamble, eyes scanning the city in case it tries to confess. 5 seconds, Izuku says. Causality wobbled. I smoothed it. Cause? Unknown. He hesitates. It felt like something took a piece. Not time traveling. Eating. Aizawa rubs his temples. There's always a new kind of stupid. I'll set a watch, Izuku says. Not omniscient. Just attentive. Do it. And remember the rails. Izuku nods. I didn't stop the truck. I taught it to brake a little earlier. Aizawa's mouth makes a motion that could be called a smile if you were charitable. Good. Keep it small. I will. Izuku's eyes shift toward the horizon. If small stops working, I'll tell you. Tell me before. That's what the call tree is for. My first call. Aizawa finishes his coffee. Ichako's looking for you. She pretends she's not, but she is. I'll go be found. And Midoriya? Yes. I'm glad the metronome ticks. Izuku's answering nod carries more truth than words would. Me too. Word spreads because it always does. 5-second skip headlines say, alternating the verb skip, hiccup, hiccough, and, in one ambitious blog, interregnum. The commission issues a brief that says nothing in an official font. Armchair physicists draw diagrams on social media with confidence inversely proportional to their accuracy. A conspiracy forum blames mushrooms. Izuku reads none of it. He reads the street. He listens to traffic islands, to the way pigeons adjust their wings a breath before a gust that no one else feels yet. He watches clocks for flinches. He checks hospitals not to intervene, but to see if anyone coded at exactly the same not time. He finds nothing. Which is its own information. The bite was precise. Minimally messy. Hungry, yes, but well behaved, like an apex predator in a lab coat. He updates the wall again. 11. If something touches time, do not let it teach you rudeness. 12. Look for the smallest true pattern before naming the enemy. He underlines 12 until the plaster warms. At dinner, he sits at his mother's table. Real soup tonight, and he makes himself able to drink it. He generates taste because taste is memory's favorite clothing. Inko watches him carefully, the way mothers take attendance with their eyes. You look tired, she says, which is an act of faith as much as an observation. I'm practicing, he says, smiling. It's nice to be someone who can be tired. She snorts. Eat. He does. The corner of the television talks about the 5-second thing. A news anchor says phenomenon with relish. Inko mutes it and keeps eating. People will be scared, she says after a while. I know. Be gentle with them. Even when they're not gentle with you. I know. And let them be brave for you sometimes, she adds, surprising herself with the force in her voice. You don't have to carry the whole grocery bag alone. He laughs out loud, delighted. I'm putting that on the wall. You put everything on that wall, she says fondly. It helps me remember that I mean it, he answers, and means it. At night, the 5 seconds happen again but not near him. The dash cam in Narahata records it. A swerve before the pothole, then the thunk after. The driver files a complaint with the city and a short prayer with nobody in particular. A cyclist feels her chain snag and then be fine and then snag again. A street vendor insists he sold the same skewer twice to the same man who swears he only paid once. Izuku feels the echo as a pressure behind the eyes he doesn't technically need. He bookmarks the coordinates. He does not appear on scene. Green rail, no current danger. Observe. Record. Be patient. He sleeps in the way that is really just deciding to be still long enough for the metronome to have the stage. He dreams anyway. A chalk outline on asphalt. Not of a body. Of a day. The chalk smears where a wheel rolled. Something kneels and rubs the chalk away with their sleeve, humming softly like a machine happy with its work. In the morning, he adds one more line to the wall. 13. If you must hunt, hunt the method, not the monster. Elsewhere, in a room with 2 cases and bad fluorescent lights, the suited man watches a monitor. He rewinds 5 seconds and plays them again and again, sipping something expensive to teach his mouth to feel like it deserves it. But he tells the case that hums hunger. No turbulence. No trail. A clean bite. He taps a key. On a different monitor, a blue silhouette from a news clip freezes mid-stride. You can see seconds, he murmurs to the screen. I can take them. His smile is precise enough to be a tool. Let's meet in the chalk. The hum behind him tightens like a belt. The man's suit does not wrinkle. He names the next test Camino on the spreadsheet, then deletes the name and replaces it with Local Crossing 3. Never advertise. Never tempt fate by speaking proper nouns out loud. He closes the laptop. The room is very pleased with itself. On campus, Achako finds Izuku exactly where Aizawa predicted. Standing in front of a wall, arguing with his own handwriting. You look like a professor who wants the thesis to apologize, she says, leaning into the doorframe. He pretends to be caught. You found me. I said I would. She steps beside him and reads. Her finger pauses under 12. Name the method, not the monster. That's very you. I'm trying to earn the right to be me, he says. Her smile fits perfectly into the second he offers it. Walk. She asks. Green rail. Green, he agrees. They circle the track at an unremarkable human pace. Stars decide to be visible. Lights decide not to flicker. Somewhere, a pigeon negotiates peace with a vending machine. Achako bumps his shoulder with hers, testing. He is solid. He grins. 5 seconds, she says finally. Yes. Scary. Only if we let it be. She nods, absorbing that like heat. You'll tell me when we move from green to amber. You'll notice, he says. I'm very bad at hiding that kind of thing from you. But she says, and then, quieter, thanks for the chair the other night. Anytime, he says, meaning it enough to make any time a place. They walk until the metronome and the sky agree on a rhythm. Across town, a clock flinches and a case hums and the room with 2 cases forgets how to feel shame. Izuku does not run. Not yet. He marks the second with a pin only he can see. He will return to it when returning is the smallest true thing that works. Izuku buys a notebook he doesn't need. He could write on air, carve letters into the spin of electrons, archive thoughts in places neurons would consider overkill. Instead he stands in a stationery shop, watching a wall of spiral-bound choices argue softly with a row of grid-ruled hardcovers. The owner keeps glancing at him, then at the door, then back again like she's waiting for physics to file a complaint. He picks a simple A5 spiral. Green cover. Wire binding that will snag on backpacks and sweaters. Paper that smells like school. At the counter, he sets down coins even though he could have paid with a very convincing illusion of a debit card. Some kindnesses are made of frictions you can feel. Bag? The owner asks, voice measuring him for danger. No, thank you. He holds up the notebook. This one needs cuffs. The owner smiles despite herself. You look taller on TV, she blurts, then blushes. I look whatever makes people feel steadier, he says, and the line lands gentle enough to be ordinary. Have a good day. Outside, he writes his name on the inside cover like a kid. Midoriya Izuku. Under it, he adds a subtitle that makes him snort at himself. A handbook for helping without taking over. He sits on a bench and begins. Entry 1. Credits. If I can fix something, begin by asking who already knows how, invite them in. Listen. Pay them money if it's their job, leave a paper trail that points at them first. Entry 2. Friction is information. When a system resists a fix, find out why before smoothing it. Sometimes the squeak is the warning label. Entry 3. Clocks. Live in the second everyone else is in practice. He looks up at the street. The metronome in his head clicks like a polite roommate. He matches it. Blink. Breathe. Turn the page. He visits Aldera to retrieve the old notebooks he used to call his heart. The entrance feels smaller. The security guard feels exactly the same, which is to say tired in a way that's married to the job. I'm here to pick up some things from my old locker, Izuku says, making his voice land in one place at a time. The guard fumbles a laminated list. Sure, Midoriya. Principal said you might come by. Try not to, he gestures vaguely at Izuku's aura, then gives up. The science club kids asked if they could ask you questions. I said no because I like my lunch break. I'll be quiet, Izuku promises, and is. His locker contains 3 battered notebooks with edges that have sworn vendettas against fingers. He runs a palm over the covers. The paper hums recognition, even if that's only in his head. He tucks them into an ordinary backpack, green, scuffed, and instantly feels more like a person who knows what to do with his hands. In the hall, 2 boys who used to laugh at him freeze. One's mouth falls open. The other tries a smirk that can't find its footing. Hey, Midoriya, the smirker says, aiming for casual and landing an apology. So you're, like, blue now? Only when it helps, Izuku says. I was always green otherwise. The not smirker blurts, you gonna turn us into frogs? Izuku blinks once, deliberately. No. Frogs are people, and people deserve consent. They stare, then laugh because humor is sometimes just relief with manners. He lets them. He doesn't reach for forgiveness like a speech to give. He lets the moment be small and enough. As he leaves, he detours past the science club room. The teacher who chaperoned the Detonera trip looks like sleeplessness discovered tax forms. I'm sorry, she says, words rushing as if outrunning shame. I should have, there were protocols, and we trusted. I'm okay, he says, which is true in enough ways to pass audit. And I wrote some protocols. He lifts the green notebook. If you'd like a draft. She takes it the way people take babies and brand new laws. Tender, terrified. Thank you. On the whiteboard behind her, someone has drawn an intrinsic field nullifier, as if it were a cartoon toaster. Izuku erases the smiling face. He leaves the toast. Back at UA, he commandeers a corner of a common room with a folding table, a sign, and a promise. The sign. Citizen Ops small fixes, big dignitive promise. Everything on the sign is in black marker, not light. Iida shows up first because clocks are his love language. Midoriya. Excellent initiative. His glasses flash in a way that has nothing to do with lenses. I need a manager, Izuku says. Someone who will stop me from doing 10 things when 3 would teach better. I accept the position, Iida says, already opening a spreadsheet he swears is just a notebook that learned ambition. Momo arrives with a planner and a sense of calm that makes paper sharper. We'll need intake forms. A rubric for green versus amber. A policy for thank yous and credit. Zero tapes the sign up with a flourish. Can the tape dispensers be considered an in-kind donation? Asking for a friend. Hiroshima claps Izuku on the shoulder with a "you're real and I like it" grin. Manly table. What's the first job? The Gaba beach still hides trash under its nice smile, Izuku says. The city's been trying. We can partner. We don't replace labor. They spend the afternoon turning good intentions into a list. What residents have been asking for. An elevator that sticks between floors twice a week. A park light that refuses to illuminate the bench mothers sit on. A clinic's generator that gets temperamental when heat waves flirt with it. Green ray lead marks with tidy ticks. We assist existing crews. Add a credit sheet, Momo says, her pen producing a form from nothing. Names of municipal staff, contractors, volunteers. Tag your contributions minimally. Minimally, Izuku repeats, writing it in the green notebook and on his wall in the same breath. They take Kagaba first because it's honest work. Trash bags, gloves, grabbers. No light shows. He carries debris the way a person does. Awkwardly, with a grunt he doesn't strictly need. When a rusted freezer threatens to slice a volunteer's shin, he nudges the edge dull. When someone finds a syringe, he doesn't sterilize the whole beach. He fetches the sharps container the city worker brought and thanks the man by name for bringing it. Ichako floats a bundle of tires with practiced delicacy. Feels weird doing it the normal way, she says, half laughing, half exhaling something else. Normal isn't less, Izuku replies. It's shareable. Bakugo arrives late and pretends he got lost. He picks up a car door like it insulted his mother and tosses it into the hall with an explosion that is technically, mercifully, within regulations. Hey, blue nerd, he says, not looking at Izuku. Your stupid sign caught Aizawa's eye. He's pretending to be mad. He's actually proud. I wrote down pretend. It helps me parse him, Izuku says. Don't parse me, Aizawa says, appearing like a sigh. Just don't get sued. We have forms, Momo calls cheerfully, waving a clipboard like a peace treaty. Of course you do, he mutters, then adds, good work, in a tone that means keep doing this and don't ask me why my eye is leaking. He wanders off to glower at a gull. By sunset, Dagaba looks less like a dare and more like a beach. A city supervisor thanks the class on camera. Izuku makes sure the camera also frames the crew in their orange vests. The news clip that night is mostly about municipal pride, as it should be. A blink and you miss it shot shows a blue blur carrying a washing machine like it weighs a stern lecture. Izuku keeps the shot for his mother. Detective Tsukauchi meets Izuku in a cafe that sells honesty in cups. Truth quirk, Izuku says by way of greeting, as they sit. Does it work on me? Tsukauchi considers the question with a detective's trained pause. It works on speech. If you intend to deceive, I know. Good. Please tell me if I do, even accidentally. Izuku wraps both hands around the mug, even though warmth is optional. I'd like to keep myself calibrated. Tsukauchi's smile is smaller than the average city block and twice as sturdy. Most people avoid me when they plan to be imprecise. I plan to be useful, Izuku says. Precision helps. They talk in clear lines. Tsukauchi asks for a mechanism summary. Izuku provides one that does not cause the barista to resign. They agree on a contact protocol. If the commission leans too hard, if villains lean harder, if the 5-second thing becomes a pattern that can hurt people. About that, Tsukauchi says, lowering his voice in a way that's habit, not necessity. We've logged 7 incidents citywide. No injuries. Cameras. Hiccup. Cars stop a breath earlier than they need to. Petty theft opportunities appear and then don't. It's almost like someone is testing the room without wanting to be seen. Bites without crumbs, Izuku murmurs. Any common threads? So far. Tsukauchi flips his notebook. Different neighborhoods, different hours. The only overlap is power grids. Places where the load spikes between 6 and 8 p.m. Dinner, Izuku says softly, thinking of his mother's table. Lights on. Ovens. Televisions. Tsukauchi nods. And hospitals. Izuku's metronome stumbles. He puts it back. I won't interfere without need, he says carefully. But, I'll watch. If it escalates past green. Call me before amber, Tsukauchi finishes. Aizawa already warned me you care too much to be prudent. Let us help you be prudent. Izuku smiles, because being known is both an embarrassment and a relief. Deal. They shake. The truth sits between them like a good coat. Practical, unshowy, warm. The clinic generator job turns into a lesson in how to help rather than how much. The building manager is a woman with a voice like sandpaper that has earned every grid number. We need a new generator, she says flatly. We need money. We need it yesterday. You gonna conjure a grant from your magic blue pockets? No, Izuku says, and likes her immediately for making it a problem of nouns. But I can get you through the next heat wave safer. He doesn't touch the generator first. He talks to the electrician in coveralls who knows the machine by name. Together they walk the circuits, tracing lines like veins. Izuku points, asks, listens. Then he does 3 small things. Teaches a fan bearing to remember lubrication a little longer. Smooths a burr on a connector that kept sparking like gossip. Suggests electrons take a slightly different path through a choke that hates its job. He documents each tweak with the electrician. They initial the log. He leaves a printout and a copy in the city's maintenance portal. Momo later sends him a text with 3 heart emojis labeled for documentation only. When the next heat dome sits on the city like a sulking cat, the generator runs without flirting with failure. The clinic credits the electrician by name in a community newsletter. Izuku's contribution is in italicized assistive consulting which makes him snort in delight. He writes in green ink. Entry 11. Paper trails are part of the help. If it didn't happen on paper, it didn't happen in the budget, and then it didn't happen next year. He lets himself be a kid for an hour. Wanna has movie night. Kirishima brings chips that would impress a geologist. Mina picks a comedy where nobody dies, explodes, or weeps artfully. Todoroki pretends not to enjoy the dumb jokes and fails beautifully. Izuku sits with a bowl of popcorn he absolutely can eat now, thanks, and practices laughing at the same time as everyone else. Ichako leans over. You're getting good at that. Popcorn? He whispers. Timing? She smirks. Popcorn too. He considers making a joke about neutrinos and kernels. He chooses the simpler truth. It's nice to be with you. She bumps his knee. Likewise. 10 minutes later, the power blinks off for 1 beat and a half. The room gasps. Zero whoops spooky. Aizawa's voice drifts from the hallway. It's a test of your patience. Pass it. The lights come back. Izuku doesn't move. He listens in 3 directions at once. Somewhere east, a substation shrugs like it meant to do that. Somewhere south, a hospital's UPS doesn't even twitch. He feels the bite. Clean. Controlled. Close enough to wave. He does not wave back. He writes one more line when the credits roll. Entry 12. Don't reward the tap on the glass predators test. So do children. So do governments respond to harm, not to provocation. He brings the green notebook to All Might because some pages need to be seen by the person who taught him to love notebooks in the first place just by existing as a symbol that needed notes. They sit on a bench outside the gym. Toshinori is in cardigan mode, hair soft, eyes clear in the way weather gets after a storm. You always wrote to understand, Toshinori says, flipping pages with careful fingers. I worried that you might stop needing to understand. I needed more, Izuku says, and it's not a line. It's a confession. When everything is possible, information is walls and doors. Toshinori taps entry 3. Clocks. This one. He smiles. I love the kettle detail. I like kettles, Izuku says, then hesitates. I haven't asked about. You don't have to. Toshinori closes the notebook, palms warm on the cover. Some paths don't need to be walked to be respected. You're doing good right where you are. They let silence be the kind that heals, not the kind people drown in. A breeze chooses a route through the trees and takes it. Somewhere, a gull negotiates with Aizawa again. Do you think I'm still a student? Izuku asks, surprising himself. Toshinori tilts his head. I think you're still learning. That counts more than slots on a roster. Izuku nods, relieved by the simplicity. Also, Toshinori adds, conspiratorial, your penmanship has improved. Izuku beams. Hatsune gave me a grip trainer. Of course she did. At 7:13 p.m., on a weekday that refuses to be special, a bakery on Route 4 loses 5 seconds and gains a tray of perfectly timed croissants. A suited man watches from his car and tastes victory like sugar and steel. The case in the backseat hums a note that could be hunger or applause. He checks his watch, then his other watch. Both agree. He smiles. He does not touch his phone. He does not say a name out loud. He thinks it though, and the thought has edges. Midoriya. The pin on a map of Musatafu glows for a second, then pretends it didn't. Izuku ends the day at his mother's table because some rituals are guardrails disguised as soup. She ladles and watches him like a rumor she wants to believe. He eats and lets his shoulders sag in a way that has nothing to do with gravity. You have a new notebook, she says, pleased. I do, he says, raising it like a toast. Will you let me read it? Every page. She turns it over, smiles at the scuff he already added. Good color. Green looks good next to blue. Green looked good next to green, too. He laughs, and in the laugh there is a boy who used to count heroes instead of seconds. He doesn't exile that boy. He pulls him up a chair. After dinner, he walks her to the window and shows her nothing at all, just the city being itself. Lights turning on that should turn on. A bus stopping where it should. A couple arguing about whether to order in or cook in that loving, annoying way a life gets when it's safe. I'm trying to keep it like this, he says softly. I see, she says. You're doing fine. He believes her enough to sleep. The metronome ticks. The city breathes. The chalk holds. In a room with 2 cases, a hum decides to be a growl for exactly 1 second. Izuku doesn't hear it. He will. UA cancels spectacle and invents homework you can watch. The official memo reads. In light of public safety priorities, this year's sports festival will be replaced by the UA Civic Practicum Showcase. Nezu calls it a pilot of cultural calibration. Aizawa calls it a way to keep children from punching each other on television. PR calls it bold. Twitter calls it names. Izuku just underlines the word practicum in his green notebook and writes, "Show the work, don't sell the sizzle." The showcase will be open to the public in 3 weeks. Until then, Wanna trains on guardrails. Not to fight harder, but to fix quieter. The first briefing happens in Gym Gamma with the bleachers pulled out and a whiteboard that thinks big of itself. Aizawa stands in front, arms folded, scarf coiled like punctuation. "We're road testing the guardrails," he says. "Green, amber, red. If you don't remember what those mean, leave." He waits 1 beat. No one leaves. "Good. Here's how this works. We've built scenarios. Not combat. Systems. Elevators. Water mains. Crowds. Medical triage alongside pros. You'll choose a role: hero, responder, coordinator, citizen. And then you'll solve the problem without turning it into a movie." He glances at Izuku. "And you will not do the whole assignment yourself." "I wrote that rule," Izuku says, raising his palm like a willing defendant. "Write it bigger," Aizawa deadpans. Momo wheels in color-coded bins labeled forms, vests, and clipboards, the trinity of civilization. Iida vibrates at a frequency only schedules can hear. Kirishima fist bumps the idea of cooperation like it's a person. Hatsum bursts through the doors with a tablet and a grin. "Upgrades. I've outfitted your comms with a rail indicator: green, amber, red LEDs on the earpieces." The indicator defaults to green. When a scene lead escalates, your ear blinks amber, then red. Guess what happens if you ignore the light? Attention. Mina tries. "My disappointment," Hatsum says gravely. "And also Aizawa. But mostly me." "Take Hatsum seriously," Aizawa says. "She actually has the power to make your tools forget how to love you." Izuku snorts softly and writes. Entry 13. Respect the tool's feelings. When gear fails, the system breaks. When tools are loved, they last. They start with Elevator 2B, a mock shaft in the support wing built for training and nostalgia for anyone who misses malls. The scenario lead is a Musatafu building inspector with forearms like blueprints. "Here's the drill," she says. "Stuck car between floors. 2 occupants. No hazard at present. Green rail. Your goal. Reassure, stabilize, coordinate with maintenance on site. We'll run it 3 times. Midoriya, your comms relay in the first round. Relay, not resolve." "Understood," Izuku says, and means it. Round 1. Achako anchors herself to the car roof, communicates with the occupants, keeps her voice like warm tea. Sato and Kirishima hand tools to the technician like practiced stagehands. Iida controls the hallway, turning panic into patience with politeness that borders on superpower. Izuku keeps the intercom clear, refrains from thinning the cable by accident with a thought, and only nudges the emergency light to stop flickering because people are calmer when shadows stop playing games. Round 2. The inspector declares a minor slip in the brake. Amber rail. Izuku asks permission with a glance. The technician nods. He reinforces a smooth surface molecule deep so it behaves for 20 minutes without learning a bad habit. They log it. Momo drafts a follow-up report for the building's owner with a polite threat disguised as formatting. Round 3. Red rail simulation. Smoke machine hisses, alarm stutters. The technician calls cut the main, but the alarm won't quit. Izuku feels the instinct tries to make the elevator forget gravity exists. He swallows it. "Permission to open the doors without forcing the frame?" he asks. "Granted," the inspector says. He writes the gap into existence so smoothly that the rails still gleam. The occupants crawl out. Mina hugs them like confetti. The alarm dies when Iida finds the right breaker with a map and a mantra. The inspector signs off on the log. "If you did it this way every time," she says, "I'd lose half my ulcers. And my overtime." "Keep the overtime," Izuku says. "We'll just retire the ulcers." She laughs like a building creaking happily. "Deal." He adds to the wall that evening. 14. In amber, change conditions. In red, change geometry. In green, change minds. They're on crowd control next Mina's domain, with Zero's tape like gentle rivers. Aizawa and Tsukauchi co-supervise. Tsukauchi's quirk is off, but his attention is on. The exercise. A block party where an electrical transformer pops, smoke puffs, and a rumor runs faster than anyone else. The goals. Prevent stampede, find the grandma separated from her grandson, keep the food vendors from starting a fight about generator placement. Achako lifts the transformer cover 2 centimeters to vent heat exactly 2. Izuku checks and Todoroki cools the casing, face calm like a weather app. Jiro uses directional sound to herd people without making anyone feel hurted. Kaminari resists the urge to be a lightning emoji and instead becomes a signpost with legs. Izuku plays citizen. He lets himself be jostled, watches where the fear catches, how it spreads, eyes shifting to exits, shoulders squaring before someone decides to push. He learns which words unlock crowds. This way is faster. We've kept a lane open for families. Food coupons at the end of the block if you help your neighbor. He makes no miracles. He does keep the generator's fickle breaker from tripping in a way that would have turned a calm moment into a story. After, Tsukauchi nods once. You're good at pretending to be ordinary. I practice, Izuku says. Keep practicing, Aizawa adds. It scares people less. Min awards him a sticker that says I was a person today. He applies it to his notebook like a medal. They build scenario cards, index cards with small disasters printed in neat type and a line at the bottom that reads. What is the smallest true thing that works? The cards become a deck. The deck becomes a ritual. Card 7. Neonatal ICU partial power loss, green emmer smallest true thing. Rebalance loads. Patch a UPS. Turn power into a promise, not a gamble. Ask a charge nurse for consent before touching anything. Card 13. Water main pinhole at elbow joint, green smallest true thing. Reduce pressure at the feeder after calling municipal dispatch. Document the temporary fix. Deliver coffee to the crew who arrives exhausted. Card 19. Panic rumor there's a bomb, green smallest true thing. Redirect narrative. Clarity, presence, named roles. Names are anchors. Card 24. Kid on rooftop edge, amber smallest true thing. Change the conversation first. Achako, soft voice. Aizawa, eyes. Izuku, shift gravel under feet to be less slippery, change wind to be kinder. The class plays at lunch. Draw a card, pitch a small thing, argue if it's true. Bakugo hates it until he doesn't. Small doesn't mean weak, he grumbles into his rice. It means right on time. Put that on a t-shirt, Kaminari says. We'll sell out at the showcase. Put it on the wall, Izuku says, already writing. 15, small is not shy. Small is surgical. Between drills, the city hiccups. Not 5 seconds this time. 8. The difference is not big, but it is a mouth saying more. It happens at 6:58 p.m. in a neighborhood where dinner is a clock that families obey. A row of ovens finishes preheating 3 breaths early. A cyclist coasts through an intersection on the green that was yellow and should have been red. A child's tablet game registers a perfect score a moment before the last note is played. In the water plant across the river, a chlorine pump doses for an instant wrong then right. No harm. Yet. Izuku hears the city blink. He tastes metal. He forces himself to do nothing for 3 slow counts because the rail is green and discipline isn't discipline until it hurts. Then he calls Tsukauchi. 8 seconds, he says. Power grid zone D, residential plus water. Log, Tsukauchi answers. We've got a report from the plant, no off-spec readings. Your discipline is appreciated. Appreciation received, Izuku says, softening the quip with a smile the detective can't hear. He hangs up and adds to his notebook. Entry 17. Pattern seeking isn't permission, recognizing a rhythm doesn't mean you get to dance first. Still, he studies. The power data Nezu provides arrives like a polite confession. Slight load drop before each skip, as if something takes a breath first. Not theft. Reallocation. Nezu raises a brow. A gourmand, not a glutton. An engineer, Izuku says. Nezu's smile shows teeth. Or someone who has borrowed one. They circle a map with pushpins and manners. The pins make a shape that isn't a circle or a line. It is a grid, plotted like a marching band, the route of a test, the rhythm of a rehearsal. Aizawa leans in just far enough to be counted as participating. If it gets to red. I'll escalate, Izuku says. Not before. Aizawa takes his word and holds it like a pen. The medical practicum is the day Izuku learns the difference between fixing a wound and owning it. Recovery girl oversees like a grandmother who knows exactly how you cheat at board games. A team from Yusutafu General sets up triage stations with gentle ruthlessness. Students shadow. The rules. Wash your hands. Ask before you touch. Ask again if the first ask was for show. Never make a person into an assignment. Izuku takes vitals. He doesn't sense them. He takes them: cuff, stethoscope, watch, penlight. He learns the choreography. Hello. I'm Izuku. Can I check your pulse? He times breaths. He counts capillary refill like he is not able to name every atom in the blood. He gets good at it the hard way because the hard way leaves a trail anyone can follow. The nurse hands him a chart. Bed 5. Burn dressing. You're assisting, not leading. He nods. Bed 5 is a practice dummy with an excellent agent. He sets out gauze, saline, a silver cream that has opinions. The student leading Jiru talks to the patient as she works, makes music of reassurance. Izuku hands what she needs a beat before she asks, then forces himself to hand it only when she asks. After, the nurse checks the dressing and gives a nod that means again. Midoriya says, "You're not a miracle. You're a teammate." Good. He hears human and stores it like a metal under the tongue where it dissolves slowly. At night, he adds. 16. Consent is not a magic word. It is a conversation. 17 Skill you can teach beats power you cannot share. He underlines 17 until the ink bleeds like a lesson that wants to be heard. The water main scenario turns instructive. Literally. UA invites a municipal crew chief named Tanaka who speaks in pipes and shrugs. He stands in the dirt with a schematic and a grin like a man who loves the day regardless of weather. Here he says, tapping the T-joint. "Your leak is gonna lie to you. Sounds like it's there, but it's 5 meters down." Echoes. Metal's a gossip. He hands Izuku the acoustic listening device. "Hear it." Izuku kneels, presses, listens. The city hums secrets. He hears the leak where Tanaka predicts it is not. He moves. Listens again. Finds the honest hiss. Tanaka smirks. "Now you know. You gonna blink the pipe fixed with your brain?" "No," Izuku says. "I'm going to dig." He shoulders a spade. Dirt weighs exactly enough to be what it is. Kirishima laughs and digs with him. Zero tapes the tarp edges down when wind tries to undo their order. When the joint shows its tired face, Izuku could anneal the metal and write new latticework into it. He doesn't. He observes. "This one fails again if we don't fix the load problem upline," he says, and Tanaka snaps his fingers. "Boy can read," Tanaka says. "Move the pressure 2 blocks east for the night. We'll swap this fitting in the morning like decent people." Izuku uses his field to ask the upline valves to redistribute. He keeps it quiet even to himself. The city shifts pressure with a satisfied sigh. Tanaka claps him good-naturedly on the shoulder hard enough to make a human wince. "I'll write you up in the log," Tanaka says. "And I don't mean for a ticket. I appreciate paper trails," almost indecently Izuku says. "Then you'll go far," Tanaka answers, and means it. Chronophage decides to be impolite for exactly the length of a breath. The warehouse near the river. Night shift. Forklifts, pallets, a radio that will not learn the end of its own course. A worker checks a list, looks up, and blinks through 12 seconds that weren't promised to him. The forklift he was prepared to avoid has already passed. His foot is where a wheel would have been. He shakes, then laughs, then tells nobody because miracles without saints are a kind of theft you can live with. A suited man watches from a mezzanine window behind a slat. He makes a note. Organic subjects adapt well at D12 seconds. Minimal rebound anxieties observed. He taps the case. The hum is satisfied. He hums back because partners deserve conversation. He thinks of Blue, of metronomes, of the way a hero turned something else, looked at a crosswalk and chose a girl's shoelace. He adjusts dials, very small. He is going to get caught if he is not careful. The thought does not frighten him. It thrills. The call tree gets its first real use on a Wednesday that won't stop raining. Izuku is halfway to becoming a puddle with opinions when his earpiece blinks amber. Aizawa's voice. Water plant reports a dosing hiccup. Within spec. But they're spooked. Amber rail. Don't touch unless the lead says yes. Tsukauchi is looped. En route, Izuku says. He walks because pedestrians teach him patience. At the plant, a woman with a badge that says Chief Operator Sato meets him with professional skepticism and a poncho that could stop a small war. "You can watch," she says. "You don't touch. If I say touch, you touch where I point." "Happy," Izuku says, delighted by the clarity. Sato shows him the logs. A heartbeat wrong in the dosing pump. Fatigue. Not physical, but temporal. The line trembled between ticks like a finger on a piano key. "Someone's testing you," Izuku says. Sato replies. "Either way, keep your blue fingers to yourself." He does. He watches the pump breathe. He does a small thing not to the machine but to the room. He asks the fluorescent lights to stop flickering, the hum to settle, the rain to pretend it is rhythm instead of static. The operators breathe easier. Sato recalibrates with hands that no longer argue with her brain. The pump keeps time. "But I," Sato says grudgingly. "Your report goes to city and commission. You'll get a copy." "I live for copies," Izuku says. Back at UA, he files the report, attaches it to his green notebook, then tapes the tape to his wall, because there is no such thing as too much redundancy when you are being careful. He adds. 18. Calm the people before you correct the machine. Nezu schedules a showcase rehearsal. Not a spectacle at tour. Stations where citizens will walk through how cities survive Tuesdays. "We will not let the public watch you bleed," he tells the staff. "We will let them watch you fill out forms." The R blanches. Aizawa smirks outright. Finally, he says, "Television that matters." Stations. 1. Power. Mitigation strategies for brownouts. Todoroki and Kaminari demonstrate load balancing under engineer Sato's glower. Izuku shows the difference between a nudge and a takeover with graphs you can understand without swearing. 2. 3. Water. Tanaka's crew with a cutaway main and a bucket of truth about pressure. Momo's laminated info sheets become instant fan favorites. 4. 5. Medical. Recovery girls consent and care kiosk. Say no to superpowers touching you without asking. Kids get stickers. Adults get uncomfortable and then grateful. 6. 7. Proud. Jiru Soundscapes. Achako's Gravity Games. Kirishima and Zero Running a Barrier, Be a Kind One Workshop. 8. 9. Paper. Iida's Glorious Clipboards. The public practices logging a fix. Hatsum sells pens that bite back if you skip fields. 10. Izuku's post is Civic Ops. Smallest true thing, the deck of scenario cards laid out like tarot, with an invitation. Draw a card. Pitch a fix. He listens to grandparents who have solved more real problems than textbooks acknowledge. He nods when a carpenter refines his wording. He edits a card based on a nurse's eye roll so affectionate it deserves its own license. He is happy in the quiet, the boring, the honest. Achako sees it and her smile holds it like a treasure. The chalk arrives like an RSVP. On the asphalt outside the support wing, neatly between two parking lines, a hopscotch grid appears in white that isn't chalk but pretends beautifully. The squares are numbered out of order. 1, 3, 2, 5, 4, 6, 8, 7. At the top, instead of home, someone has written later. Aizawa stares at it, unimpressed on principle. Art students getting bold. Izuku crouches. He doesn't touch. He listens. The dust sings like it remembers being arranged by someone who enjoys the precision of children's games and the cruelty of small jokes. Chronophage, he says softly. Name for internal use only, Aizawa says. Internal, Izuku echoes, keeping the word behind his teeth. He flips to card 31, crowd, provocation, rail. Green. Smallest true thing. He takes a piece of real chalk from a nearby bin and adds a single square to the grid, after later. Now. That's it? Kaminari asks, disappointed. Don't feed it, Izuku says. Don't ignore it either. Nezu's eyes gleam like a knife you use to slice cake. It wants to play. It wants to measure me, Izuku says. And it wants me to measure it. He refuses the invitation to jump. He walks away with the deliberate boredom of a cat. The hopscotch stays. For now. He writes, later. 19, when the problem demands theater, answer with stagecraft, not soliloquy. 20, leave a reply. Do not give a performance. Night. Rain that finally convinces itself to stop. The city's windows practice sleeping. Izuku stands in his empty room that is not empty, metronome ticking, rules on the wall shining faintly because he lets them. He considers red rail. He doesn't love it. Red rail is for when the machine breaks and the people scream and the smallest true thing is big. He has not gone red yet. He is proud. He isn't sure pride belongs on the wall, so he keeps it in his pocket like a coin he doesn't spend. His earpiece blinks amber once. Aizawa's voice is sleepy and therefore honest. Commission requested a showcase walkthrough for their people tomorrow. They'll ask about contingencies. Don't let them recruit you into a slogan. Understood, Izuku says. I'm a paragraph at best. Your bibliography, Aizawa mutters, then. Get some sleep. I'm practicing, Izuku says. He turns off the metronome and lets the dark be a room with doors. Across town, in a quiet office with a window that reflects only ambition, a man sets a piece of real chalk on a coaster and lines it up with the edge precisely. Soon he tells the hum in the case. We'll take a bigger bite. The case sings back in a key nobody taught it. The man smiles without showing teeth. After the showcase, he says. When the city is watching the right hand, we'll take seconds with the left. He writes a word on his legal pad. Camino. He draws a neat line through it and writes. Musatafu Plaza 1900 hours. He caps the pen. He turns off the lights. He dreams of hopscotch grids that skip numbers and still insist they're fair. Morning brings parents with strollers, cops with coffee, commission with smiles that print. Izuku stands at his station, card deck spread, green notebook open, blue set to polite. He greets, he listens, he learns. A boy draws card 19. Panic rumor and answers, I'd get my mom. She knows where to go. Izuku writes. Entry 21. Find the person who already knows the exits. Sato argues with a bureaucrat until the bureaucrat learns to love flowcharts. Tanaka signs a hard hat for a kid whose eyes widen like valves. Recovery girl refuses to give a selfie to a man who forgets the consent sign directly behind him. She gives him a pamphlet instead. At noon, Aizawa calls a 5-minute break because even heroes need water. Izuku steps back, sips, closes his eyes, and listens. The grid hums, not the hopscotch, the city. A low, anticipatory note. Not yet read. Amber is practicing. He breathes with it. He places a pin in a second that has not arrived. Ichako sidles up, shoulder brush. You okay? Yes, he says. We're good. For now. For now is a place, she says. He smiles. I live there. She points casually toward the edge of the plaza. A commission rep watches with a photographer who thinks he's sneaky. A man in a delicate suit checks 2 watches, then looks up and meets Izuku's eyes across 30 meters and a dozen seconds. His smile is precise. Izuku returns nothing at all. The metronome in his chest clicks once, twice, then steadies. After the showcase, he says, almost to himself. What? Ichako asks. Nothing, he answers, which is not deceit. It is staging. He slides card 28 to the top of the deck. Power. Public square, sunset crowd, load spike. At the bottom, in fresh ink, he writes. Smallest true thing. Decide where you are before you decide what to do. He looks at the words until they belong to him. He is where he needs to be. He is going to keep it that way for as long as he can. The showcase opens like a city finally remembering what weekdays are for. No cannons, no fireworks, no reporters hanging from drones like fruit. Just stations and tape lines and 1,000 small chances to behave. At the gate, Iida hands out maps and smiles so official it disinfects. Momo's kiosk gives people forms that make them feel like participants instead of spectators. Todoroki stands at power with Sato and a whiteboard that believes in current. Recovery girl sits at medical under a banner that reads ask before touch and makes men blink twice and then nod, chastened. Tanaka's water station smells like wet iron and competence. Jiru's crowd corner hums with soundscapes that nudge feet and tempers the way good music nudges afternoons. Izuku takes his place at Civic Ops. The smallest true thing, a folding table and a deck of scenario cards laid out like tarot. He is turned down to polite blue. Freckles, hair, gym shirt suggested into existence with Hatsume-style layer. The green notebook waits open, pen tucked like a habit. People draw cards, pitch fixes, argue, learn. It feels like a classroom that forgot to sprinkle trauma on the lesson plan. The boy in a Spider-Man hoodie, licensed or not, is between him and Nezu, pulls card 19. Panic rumor and says, I'd stand on a bench and yell the truth. Izuku writes. Entry 21. Elevate truth gently. A bench is a platform, not a podium. A grandmother corrects card 13. Water main to bring the crew cold tea too, not just coffee. Heat kills patience, and Tanaka bows to her with the solemnity of men who know where their wisdom comes from. The commission arrives with smiles that make printers proud. They glide from station to station, asking about scalability and brand safety and contingency messaging. Aizawa answers with clipboards and logs and don't. Nezu purrs. Hatsume's rail LEDs gleam green along 100 earpieces like a shared pulse. Ichako floats a toddler briefly and safely so the kid can see the generator cutaway. The mother laughs, the toddler claps, gravity plays along. Kaminari signs 3 commutator diagrams and only shocks 1 pen, on purpose. Kirishima carries a bundle of sandbags with such cheerful sincerity that the crowd begins to believe there is no problem sandbags cannot reframe as solvable. Izuku is happy. Not movie happy. Bench and pen happy. The kind that sits well in the stomach and asks for seconds. He updates a rule between card draws. 21. If someone learns something because you held the room steady, you did enough. The clock chooses truth at 18:57. The plaza is full but not foolish. Lanes open. Signs speak. The air is the kind that cities make when a lot of people agree without knowing they've agreed. Izuku feels the hum pick up in the power lines bordering the square, not a surge. A preparatory exhale. The load on grid D drops 3% for no announced reason. He breathes with it. Amber is warming up. Where are you? Here. Who are you? Someone with a table and a deck and a doctrine. At 18:59, a man in a delicate suit stops at the edge of Civic Ops. Not close enough to be a hazard, just close enough to be counted. 2 watches. One old, one the kind that pairs to an expensive phone. He doesn't make eye contact. He lets it happen to him that Izuku sees him. On Izuku's ear, Hatsume's indicator blinks once. Amber. Aizawa's voice. Plant reports microscopic wobble. No off-spec. Hold green unless you see teeth. Happy, Izuku murmurs. He slides a card to the top of the deck. Card 28 power. Public square, sunset crowd, load spike. At the bottom, his fresh ink. Smallest true thing. Decide where you are before you decide what to do. He decides. He is at a table with a deck. He is in a plaza with lanes. He is in a city that wants to pass this class. The second turns. 1900 hours. The bite takes 20 seconds. It is quiet as a decision. Hammers stall, then resume. A balloon arch thinks about falling, then chooses to remember knots. A child begins to drop a popsicle and then is holding it again and then has a stripe of melted sugar on his wrist that the stripe did not previously plan for. A field kitchen's timer dings and then doesn't and then dings again, but the bread is perfect. People do not scream. They pause. That's the danger. Terror is noisy. Bewilderment is self-feeding. Izuku does the smallest true thing. He makes a sound. Not a command. A metronome click, soft and certain, at the edge of hearing. It spreads like a neighbor tapping a shared wall to say we are here. Jiru hears it first without instruments and layers it into her speakers as ambient rhythm. The plaza matches, feet shift, shoulders settle, breath finds the downbeat. The pause stops breathing. He looks at the truss over the power booth. One bolt has been asked by something not him to hold as if it had already held. It would fail in 40 seconds, not now. The skip only moved the story of its fatigue. He does amber. Heat moves out of the bolt, Todoroki's hand compensates like a partner in a dance, Sato nods once and radios for a wrench. No miracle. Maintenance. Documented. He looks at a pram at the curb. The brake was set, unset, set in the not time. Slope plus sugar plus toddler wiggle will make it drift. He does green. Echako, a glance. She touches the handle with 2 fingers and a grin, wow, sticky. The mother laughs. The brake is leaned on properly. No lecture. Kindness. He looks at the balloon arch again. Not the structure, the string someone will trip on in 21 seconds because their attention is busy translating the plaza back to common sense. Green. Zero tapes it up, making it look like part of the plan. The trip is cancelled. A stomachache in a different timeline retires unearned. He hears the hum inside the hum. The case. Close. Not here, but watching. The suited man's shoulders relax the way people do when their experiment yields data. Izuku doesn't look at him. He looks at the crowd. Cards. He calls cheerfully, fingers flipping the deck like a magician who only does card tricks that make cities easier to live in. Draw one. Help me answer. No wrong answers, only better ones. People lean in. The hum is forced to hide inside a conversation it didn't plan for. He watches for edges. The edge appears at the west side of the square, where a delivery van has done its part of the dance by stopping and is about to undo its part because the driver's second is off by a hair. Iida is already there, arms in perfect perpendiculars, voice bright and absolute. People listen to him because he knows how to draw a line and make it a gift. Amber keeps throbbing. He keeps it small. The suited man adjusts one watch with 2 fingers. The second blurs, not 20 this time. 3, 5, nibbling. Izuku feels the taste of it. An engineer's appetite. He has been right about the method, not a time traveler, a time allocator with teeth. He writes a line in his head, later for the wall. 22, when the enemy touches rhythm, answer with tempo, not thunder. The child drops their popsicle for real. Echako laughs and gives them a new one, lighter by 6 ounces and 1 tantrum. The indicator in Izuku's ear is still amber. He wants it to stay amber like a prayer stays inside a throat while the room tests better words. The bite ends. 100 people exhale at once and don't know they did. Aizawa into the ear. Status. Green. Izuku answers and means it. Tsukauchi. Aizawa again, across a net of calm. Cameras show an oscillation at the southwest corner. Tsukauchi replies. Commission eyes there too. Midoriya, if you can give me breadcrumbs quietly. Izuku gives him a trail not in chalk but in paper. He walks to the city ops log board, writes an observational note about minor load drop, timestamp, grid edge, possible instrument artifact. Coordinate with plant. The suited man can see him doing it. The trail is public, boring, official. Tsukauchi doesn't need magic. He needs process. Izuku hands it to him wrapped in bureaucracy and a smile. The suited man chooses that moment to make eye contact. His smile is precise. He lifts his old watch slightly, just enough to show it can still matter. Then he turns away the way people do who have made a point and don't want applause. Izuku lets him go. He does not follow. Green rail means patience is not surrender. It is staging. Giru turns the metronome click down and slides in a light beat with a bass line that tastes like relief. People murmur, laugh, return to whichever station their second had been pointing them toward. Todoroki tightens the truss bolt with Sato. Tanaka gives a child a tiny wrench and a long story about pressure. Recovery girl refuses to let a commission rep cut the line for a selfie and instead hands him a clipboard. Ichako leans her shoulder against Izuku's very gently. Smallest true thing. Tempo, he says. And a log. She looks proud in a way that makes the night feel honest. The commission requests a press moment. Nezu gives them a press minute. Aizawa stands behind, radiating, we have many clipboards and they are not for you. Izuku steps to the side of the frame where tables live and benches learn. He does not vanish. He stays because staying is the kind of stagecraft that tells the crowd this was part of the show. Mr. Midoriya, a reporter asks despite Nezu's best perimeter, what happened at 1900. Izuku smiles in the way that keeps lawyers awake but not angry. The city asked for attention, he says. We gave it. We'll be publishing our logs and learnings with the relevant authorities, as we promised. In the meantime, thank you for walking, not running. It isn't a quote for a poster. It is a sentence you can put in a newspaper without breaking it. The reporter tries for more. Aizawa moves exactly 1 centimeter forward and the microphone remembers kindergarten. Cleanup looks like competence. Sato signs. Tanaka signs. Momo files. Iida checks that every pen is returned or its absence is paid for with paperwork. Jiro rolls cables like Mercy. Kaminari and Siro race with trash bags because men must race. Aizawa pretends not to notice and then pays out a quiet 500 sit-ups between them when he inevitably does. Izuku is the last at his table. The deck goes into the box. The sign flips to thank you. He looks at the plaza as a whole and sees 1,000 small decisions that landed. He finds a rule for the wall. 23. If a crowd learned a rhythm, leave them humming. The Chaco steals the pen and adds, at the very bottom, 24, you're allowed to be proud when we hum. He laughs and doesn't erase it. He goes home for soup because some equations always solve. Inko serves without speaking at first. He eats without pretending. Tonight he makes himself want food and it works and he is grateful to his own patience. Television said nothing happened, she says eventually, dry as toast. Television was bored, he says. That's a compliment. She looks at him, takes attendance like a teacher who knows everyone's middle name, and nods. Good. He shows her the sticker Mina gave him. I was a person today. Inko peels it off and sticks it to the fridge. Leave it, she says. Let's collect a row. Deal, he says. They watch the skyline being itself. No sirens. No breaking news chirons that blink live as if that makes anything more true. Somewhere, a hopscotch grid under a streetlight glows faintly and then forgets to. Izuku writes 2 lines on a sticky note because the wall is at UA and sometimes rules need to spend the night at home. 25. Red rail is not a performance. Use it like anesthesia. Rarely, exactly, with consent where possible. 26. When the enemy tests in public, grade their paper, not their ego. He puts the note on the fridge under the sticker. Inko taps the paper like you pat a dog that did its job. Sleep, she orders. I'm practicing, he says, and it's a joke and a vow. The suited man sits in his car and reviews footage that will never air. He watches a plaza decide to be reasonable on commandlessly. He watches his 20 seconds turn into failure data. He smiles, not angry, excited. He writes in a notebook with lines so straight they could pass inspection. Public reaction minimal with anchoring stimulus, auditory metronome. Subject Midoriya favors distributive strategies. Avoid centralizing intervention. Amber escalation thresholds. Environmental, infrastructure, medical, never ego-driven. Hypothesis. Extend byte to process instead of moment. Remove an hour in a controlled corridor. Observe how a society performs without a Tuesday between 2 and 3 a.m. Negligible public-facing risk. Significant data yield. He prints a word on the page. Plaza corridor. Below it, in pencil, as if ashamed of itself. Camino. He erases the word again. He doesn't like proper nouns. He looks at the case. It hums, satisfied and hungry. Bigger bite, he says. Soon. The case agrees in a key nobody taught it. Back in his empty room that isn't empty, Izuku turns up the metronome and lets it click until the day remembers how to end. He writes on the wall in light that doesn't wake neighbors. 27. Decide where you are. Decide who you are. Then decide what to do. In that order. He underlines the order until the plaster warms under the rule. He considers the hopscotch grid. He considers later. He remembers writing now. He feels a pin in a second not yet here. He sleeps because morning is a room too and he wants to be in it when it arrives. Across the city, somewhere a corridor of time puts on a closed for cleaning sign in a language only 2 people can read yet. One of them is practicing being human. The other is practicing hunger. Both will get better. The hour vanishes like a receipt you swear you kept. Not everywhere. A corridor 3.5 kilometers long, 200 meters wide puts up an invisible closed for cleaning sign between 2:03 and 2:59. Cameras freeze, then reappear with clocks that pretend they were never confused. Bus GPS pings jump a block. Smart meters register exactly the power they expected to, which is how you know they're lying. They never agree that perfectly. Most people sleep through it. The city does not. At 3:10, 2 men wake in an alley with their wrists in industrial epoxy, notes pinned to their jackets with office tacks. The notes read. You borrowed hours from others. Return them. A stencil on the brick behind them says stain in clean geometry, no blood, sharp corners. They are loan sharks with good lawyers and worse friends. They are alive. They are angry in the way men get when someone else writes the story and leaves them illiterate. The convenience store clerk who was on a smoke break at 2:01 swears she blinked and saw nobody and then blinked and saw epoxy. The air felt threadbare, she tells the cop who takes the report. By breakfast, a grainy clip hits the net. A figure in a hood and a hard shell mask with a vertical slit like a careful scowl, walking up a stairwell while the timestamp sits still. The caption. Stain returns the city's time. It trends badly. UA ethics becomes a live fire exercise. Nezu moderates, pleased and worried in equal measure. Aizawa sits on a desk with a mug that threatens anyone who treats this as a debate club. Tsukauchi stands in the back because truth is a backbone, and that's where backbones go. On the screen. The stencil, the notes, the map. Echako's mouth is a hard line. Iida's hands twitch against the memory of a name, a blade, a philosophy that cut too much. This is not the stain, Momo says, making the distinction legal, which is the most dangerous kind of distinction to ignore. But it is a theft of the symbol. Hiroshima leans forward, elbows on knees. It's cowardly. Hiding in the time skip to do ambush justice. That's not manly. Foolish, Todoroki adds, almost gently. Cowardice is too active a word for incompetence. Tamanari raises a hand halfway. But, what if they go after worse people next time? Loan sharks today, predators tomorrow. Is the method the only problem, or? The method is the problem, Iida snaps, sharper than he intends. He breathes. He squares his glasses like apology. The method turns justice into a hobby. You don't get to make a hobby of people. Ichako nods small, certain. They used a skip because it makes them unaccountable. That's not justice. That's absence with a knife. All eyes drift to Izuku, who has been quiet, writing in the green notebook without trying to be poetic. He reads what he's written. Entry 22. Don't let a borrowed method justify new harm. If an enemy invents a tool, using it doesn't make you clever. It makes you late at kindness. He closes the notebook. We hunt the method, he says. Not the mask. If we remove the corridor, the stencil becomes just paint and a bad philosophy. Tsukauchi raises a hand, a rare interruption. 2 things. 1. We follow the paper trail. There will be 1. 2. We don't underestimate how useful the corridor is to more than one agenda. The mask will not be the last to try it. Aizawa sips. So. Method first. Then the opportunist. Then the engineer with the hum. Izuku looks at the map. The corridor runs along a feeder line, then jogs to follow a fiber backbone, then kisses a water main, as if testing how many kinds of infrastructure rhythm it can harmonize without cracking any one song. It's not just power, he says, almost to himself. It's clocks. Anything that keeps time is a courtesy, not a religion. Nezu's eyes glitter. Lovely phrasing. Horrible implication. Yes. He writes on the board in block letters. Clock discipline. Under it, 4 circles: power, telecom, traffic, water connected by arrows that make a square dance. Momo taps her tablet. I have supplier lists for rubidium oscillators purchased in the past 3 months within the city. Also shipment manifests for precision timing gear. I will narrow by purchasers with non-descriptive shell names. Aizawa grunts approval. Class project. Close group. No social posting. If any of you thought this was a content opportunity, put your phone in a jar. Mineta whines faintly. Aizawa continues like fog. Midoriya, he adds without looking, green rail. Observe, report. No heroics in holes you can't see the bottom of. Green, Izuku says, and keeps it in his throat so he can hear it later. They go to the corridor on foot because wheels teach you nothing about sidewalks. The air at the start point tastes ordinary. That's the trick extraordinary wrapped in beige. Izuku kneels by a traffic control box and listens with his fingertips like a stage tech who loves cues. He doesn't fix. He hears. The logs inside the box whisper. NT Piri sync at 301.002. Pure offset negligible. Inhuman. The clock asked the time server what time it was and nodded like a liar with good manners. At a bus stop, the digital board shows scheduled arrivals. The real buses arrived on time, the board every so slightly more on time, which is only funny if you've ever watched a city try to be tidy. A maintenance worker grumbles to a colleague, it's like the system took a nap and woke up with a fresh cup of coffee. Izuku thanks him for the line in his head and writes it on a sticky note later. At a telecom cabinet, Hatsume's temporary sensor pings. Tiny wobbles ride the fiber like teeth on a zipper. She texts him. Your amber wiggles have a frequency. We'll bring toy tomorrow. He replies. Call the toy a metronome and sends, which she returns with 6 patents and. Over a water main access, Tanaka roped in because the man can smell a scam, listens to pipes with his ear. Pressure's honest, he says. Which is suspicious. Pressure is never honest after midnight. Tsukauchi joins them at the midpoint, flips through a notebook with a cop's shorthand. 2 more epoxy notes. No new footage. Somebody is very proud of lining up their alibi with a skip. Izuku squints at an alley mouth. Someone spray-painted stain in the particular white of hardware store primer. He talks to the paint like it can be reasoned with. The molecules admit they were put up after 3 o'clock, but before the city remembered to yawn. The message is a coat, not a skin. Copycat looking for a known terror brand, he says. No creed, just a logo. Iida exhales carefully through his nose. A relief and an insult. Both can be true, Momo says softly. They walk the exit. The corridor did not end so much as stop being interesting. The edge is clean. Too clean. We need a seat, Tsukauchi says. Where does it start? Nezu threads his paws behind his back. Follow procurement. Momo's tablet pings. 3 shell companies bought high-stability references in the last 6 weeks, she reports. 2 are gullible startups who say blockchain when asked what they do. The third is LaterWorks LLC. The Chaco blinks. They did not. They did, Momo confirms. Suite rental in an office block near the river. Sub-basement access. 2 deliveries of precision timing gear signed for by, get this, Mr. Epic. Aizawa says something that, if transcribed, would require asterisks. Tsukauchi. The detective's mouth is a straight line. I'll pull the leases and see if a judge wakes for warrants today. Green rail until then, Aizawa adds, giving the rail a capital letter out of respect. Izuku writes a rule on his wall when he returns. 28. If the name is a joke, the plan isn't. The vigilante posts a manifesto that tries and fails to be literature. Voice masked, cadence like a metronome abused. The video shows the slit mask and neat gloves. No violence, only issuing of invoices to thieves of time, faces of loan sharks and scam artists blurred badly. If heroes will not return the city's hours, the voice says, we will. The we is arms singular. The logo. Stain. The tag. Return to whore. It's messy enough that PR wants to get into a fight with it, which is why Izuku favors paper again. He sits with Tsukauchi in a police conference room that smells like coffee burned into legend. He flips the manifesto transcript over. On the back, he draws a rectangle 3.5 by 0.2 and writes 203259 inside. Not random, he says. Pick a time with the least witness obligations. Night shift, small hours, fewer buses, hospitals on UPS anyway. The corridor is walking along the parts of the city that won't scream if you move them. Tsukauchi taps the rectangle with a pen. Next walk. Izuku points to a grid intersection where fiber, power, and traffic control handshake daily. Here. If I were an engineer who wanted to test how 2 clocks argue when introduced to a bully, I'd put the lab under this square. Tsukauchi nods once. Stake out, he says. Green rail. If something stupid happens, amber. If a person dies, red. Copy, Izuku says. His mouth tastes like pennies. He ignores it. The detective adds, almost as an afterthought, Midoriya. If you see the vigilante first. I talk first, Izuku says. I always talk first. And if they don't? I still talk, he answers, and it's not bravado. It's doctrine. Hatsumi arrives with toys. She slaps a lunchbox-sized rig on the table. Portable clock friend, she declares. GPS disciplined oscillator, rubidium hand holding, my secret sauce to watch the skips in real time. It pings green. If the room starts lying, it chirps. Izuku grins. It chirps. It chirps, she says with devout seriousness. Mildly annoying. You'll hate it. You're welcome. He loves it immediately because it turns amber wiggles into a sound his team can share. Giru adds a line in from the city's ambient. If we mix the chirp with the plaza click from last night, she says, we can build a beat that tells us when to be calm and when to pay attention. The sound of a rail, Izuku says. I like rails that make music. They test in an empty classroom. Hatsume's box chirps, Jiru's beat slots around it like careful hands. The rhythm is subtle enough that it doesn't scare anyone and insistent enough that no one in the vicinity forgets to breathe together. Iida records a protocol because protocols make him less likely to yell. If chirp rises, we announce. Amber check. We look at jobs we can do smallest. We assign a recorder. We document. We wait. Add. We don't chase, Aizawa calls from the doorway. We don't chase, Iida adds, pen decisive. The Kugo leans against the wall. If we see the mask, though. We don't chase, Aizawa repeats, because opinions break before rails do. The Kugo meets Izuku's eyes. Talk first, he says, grudgingly. Always, Izuku says. He writes another entry. Entry 23. Proof before panic, make the record. Make the plan. Make the move. In that order. If order fails, it better be because a person would have died. Stakeout night tastes like hot dust. Izuku and Tsukauchi share a rooftop edge. The street below hums, then hums wrong, then hums right. Hatsume's box sits between them like a polite bomb, chirping every 60 seconds to say yes, still friends with the sky. Jiru's beat right under it makes their hearts choose the same downbeat. Aizawa on calm. Green rail. If I hear wind in your mix, I come tie you to a pipe. Happy, Tsukauchi says dryly. Windless rooftop. Ichako is 2 buildings over, eyes on lanes, body weight perfect. Iida and Momo sit in a parked car like a diagram that learned to breathe. Tanaka sleeps in his truck with a spade and a grin. Sato texts snaps of a pump and 3 exclamation points, meaning behaving. Duo 1 arrives like a calendar clearing its throat. Hatsume's box chirps once, friendly. 203. Silence. Not absence. Discipline. Every device that keeps time in a friendly way stops keeping it with friends. The box does not chirp because it cannot see the sky, because the sky has been placed on hold by a force that is both careful and rude. Giru's beat keeps the humans anchored. The street below continues, only it doesn't. Cameras freeze and hold their frames. A stray cat mid-step is still, then is up on the dumpster. A moth hits a light, then hits it again. Izuku tastes metal and method. At 2:05, a figure turns a corner with a neatness that suggests rehearsal. Hood. Slit mask. Gloves. A coil of epoxy pack on a belt, a tack dispenser like a stapler. They pace the corridor like someone walking a garden path they paid for. Ask Tsukauchi says calmly. Green rail. Green Izuku echoes. I will talk. He doesn't teleport. He walks down because gravity is a courtesy and he has chosen courtesy as his uniform. He reaches the street as the masked figure kneels by a back door with a landlord's notices glued to it and begins to tape a note with awful careful penmanship. Return the hour. Excuse me, Izuku says, as if asking a librarian for a book that isn't on the shelf. Can we talk about your thesis? The masked head tilts. The voice when it comes is modulated to be inhuman and lands right in the uncanny valley that makes people feel like rude furniture is speaking. You are not a hero, it says. I'm a citizen, Izuku answers. I'm also someone who can see the teeth marks you're leaving on the city. They don't make your argument more true. The mask stands. Heroes make spectacle. I make accounting. These men stole ours. I return the sum. Izuku hears Iida breathe on the channel, hears Ichako shift her balance, hears Aizawa not sigh, and that is a loud not sigh. You are not returning anything, he says. You are borrowing a method you do not understand and calling the interest justice. The mask looks past him at the air, as if watching a clock they respect more. You cannot stop me, they say matter of fact. There is no time to stop. There is, Izuku says, and taps the earpiece twice. Jiru's beat finds the masked figure's chest and refuses to be ignored. Humans are metronomes that learn to invent excuses. The masked figure's shoulders learn to be on the downbeat. You're using someone else's rhythm, Izuku says. That is theft. The masked figure weighs him the way a burglar weighs a hinge. You will not understand, they say, which is the last sentence a coward says before running. They do not run. They step a clean blink from standing to 5 meters down the alley. Izuku could do it better. He refuses to compete on stolen terms. Green rail, Aizawa warns softly. Hold. I'm holding, Izuku says. Louder, to the mask. If you believe in returning time, return your time to a conversation. Tell me who gave you the corridor. The mask stills for a fraction inside to skip. They weren't expecting the question in that form. That tells him too much and not enough. My time is mine, they say. Then stop spending it like a child with a stolen card, Izuku replies, and the only reason it isn't cruel is because he isn't cruel when he says it. He is tired and honest. The masked figure takes one step at Tell and Izuku has the wall ready in his head. 29. Never chase a coward into a maze. Change the maze. He draws a line from that rule to the alley architecture and does the smallest true thing. He asks the door behind the mask to be very stuck. It obeys because hinges like to be told what they are. The mask uses the corridor to blink again and almost face plants into a door that now remembers rust intimately. They pause, recalculating. The city chews heroes, they say, last attempt at a banner. It will chew you. It already did, Izuku says. I made a metronome out of its teeth. Go home. They leave because there is nothing to pose against in a room with no stage. The corridor continues to be gone until 2:59, then returns, bringing Hatsume's chirp with it like a bird that never doubted migration. Tsukauchi meets Izuku at the mouth of the alley, hands in pockets, eyes doing a math problem. Thank you for not grabbing, he says. I wanted to see if they needed the corridor to move like that, Izuku says. They do. They're not special. They're opportunistic. And the corridor? Humming, Izuku answers. And humming with purpose. Not for the mask. For someone who treats seconds like tokens to spend. Tsukauchi nods. Warrants. On a judge's desk with a very detailed affidavit, he replies, then adds, you should go home for 2 hours. Your face is starting to do the thing. The thing? The thing where it writes reports from your cheekbones, Izuku says. Tsukauchi actually laughs, which is rarer than warrants at 3 a.m. Morning assembly is weary and wired. Aizawa plays the alley footage to the class in room sound only. The masked voice lands like a cheap lecture. Bakugo snorts. Stain light, he says. No flavor. All billboard. Billboards are dangerous, Momo reminds, gentle. They do not require substance. Ichako slides a can of vending machine coffee to Izuku without looking. He makes himself crave it and succeeds enough to smile thanks. Jiro nudges Hatsume's box. Chirp did great, she says, like she's praising a pet that prevented a meteor. Hatsume preens. I have a version too where it bites you if you ignore it. No 5 voices say it once. Nezu writes on the board. Mask equals opportunist corridor equals engineer hum equals source. Underline under source thick enough to count as a road. Aizawa drops a folder on the desk. Later Works LLC. Lease, deliveries, maintenance requests. They complain a lot about inconsistent HVAC timing. We complain a lot about people who try to be clever in our city. Warrant? Kaminari asks, eager in that way that used to break things in training and now breaks silence. Ending Tsukauchi says, appearing like a truth. Judge needed a nap. She will sign after tea. We go at noon. Green rail until then. Izuku writes a new rule on his wall before they head out. 30, when boredom is brave, be boring. Later Works, sub-basement. Noon, rain that can't make up its mind. Papers signed, badges on lanyards, Aizawa's scarf behaving like a leashed storm. They enter like electricians, not like knights. Tsukauchi first with a soft word to the building manager. Sato second because HVAC timing is her love language. Tanaka third with a wrench that makes doors honest. Izuku last, blue turned to polite shadow, green notebook in hand because he has decided a pen is a better weapon than a lecture. The sub-basement smells like new metal and old dust. 3 racks stand dressed in precision. Rubidium standards, phase noise filters, distribution amps. Cables labeled like someone wanted to be praised for neatness. Legal to own, Momo murmurs, illegal to use like this. Hatsume's box chirps once, affronted. We are indoors, it says in chirp. Izuku leans close. The gear hums, not at the radio frequency a station would, but at the metronome the tell stations went to agree. The hum tastes like the corridor. He doesn't touch it. He writes a serial number down instead. He writes a name on the label no one expected a label to have. Epic 02. Sato finds the HVAC controller. The logs show resets at 2 o'clock, 2:02, 2:03. Someone wanted the air to be timed, she says, disgust soft as rust. Tsukauchi picks up a small piece of chalk from the top of a server, a showy calling card the engineer didn't mean to leave. The janitor they don't have. He bags it like a sigh. Owner? Aizawa asks. Mr. Epic is not a person, Momo says, reading emails. The lease is paid by wire from a bank that doesn't ask questions. The initial meeting to set up the space was done by. Ah. She turns the screen. A face. Delicate suit, 2 watches. The room breathes like a report almost done writing itself. We'll call him chronophage here, Tsukauchi says. On paper, we will call him unknown male. Method, then monster, Izuku says softly. Rule's still good. He writes the last rule of the day on his wall that night. 31, monsters are just methods with good publicists. Break the method. Starve the publicity. Feed the people. He underlines feed because soup is still the only equation he trusts absolutely. He goes home for dinner. Inko listens to the rooftop story. She doesn't like masked men who think invoices are justice. She does like coffee with condensed milk. She asks if he is tired. He says he is practicing. She nods like a judge signing a warrant. The city hums, disciplined, offended, alive. Somewhere, a man with 2 watches clicks his tongue at the empty sub-basement he will file as a sunk cost. He places a chalk stick in a drawer, closes it, opens a different drawer full of keys. Corridor was never the plan, he tells the case. It was a rehearsal. The case hums in the key of appetite. Next he says and writes. Hergless. Izuku sleeps with the metronome louder than usual. The beat is steady. The chalk waits. The Kugo hates the phrase do the smallest true thing. He won't say hate, not out loud, but the way his jaw sets when Izuku writes the words on the wall counts as a dictionary entry. He learned to be a blast radius. Now the homework says be a gasket. He respects results, not slogans. If small works, fine, then small earn survival. If it doesn't, he'll be thunder. Aizawa sees the set of Bakugo's shoulders and writes an assignment that is either genius or petty. Possibly both. Hazmat practicum, he says, flicking a folder onto the table. You 2 are paired. Lead. Sato from the plant. Support. Tanaka. Scenario window. 1530 to 1730. Bakugo flips the folder like it insulted him. Chemicals. Resins and compressed gases, Sato says, appearing with a clipboard that might bite. We're running a pressure test on a storage manifold, plus a curing cycle on a 2-part epoxy tank. There will be valves. There will be safety. There will be no heroics. Midoriya is coordination. Bakugo is runner. Runner? Bakugo echoes, offended. Human metronome with legs, Sato clarifies. You move when I say move. You do not add ignition sources to a flammable atmosphere. Your quirk stays in your pocket with your pride. Bakugo stares at Izuku like this is his fault. Izuku lifts his palms. Small can be fast, he offers. Bakugo snorts. Then we'll be the fastest small. He signs the safety form hard enough to dent the paper. It pleases Sato, which is a dangerous feedback loop. In the hour before the practicum, the vigilante posts a new video with worse art direction and more confidence. The voice-modulated, precise speaks over a slow shot of clocks. Bus stop displays, kitchen timers, a gym wall. Return to Whore burns at the bottom in letters that want to be a brand. Heroes live in spectacle, the voice says. We live in the hour. Today we return 60 minutes to the city. We will take them from thieves and give them to the honest. Momo blinks. The honest do not want this. Tsukauchi's jaw tightens. They're advertising. That's new. Nezu's whiskers angle like antennae. Branding is almost a comfort. It makes people lazy. Aizawa turns off the projection with a finger that counts as a verdict. Class. This is not your job. It's the commission's headache and Tsukauchi's joy. Our job is to do hazmat the way humans survive Tuesdays. He looks at Bakugo and Izuku in a way that counts as a promise. I will pull you out if you make me. Don't make me. Hatsum hands Bakugo a band around the wrist like a festival bracelet. Rail lead, she says. Green good, amber careful, red get your boss. It also vibrates like a mosquito in your bones. Bakugo bares his teeth. I don't need jewelry to know when to move. Then consider it my feelings, Hatsum says sweetly. Please take care of my feelings. Giro tucks a tiny earbud behind his ear. My beat will sit under your skull, she tells him. If the corridor pulls, we'll cover your rhythm. Don't fight it. Ride it. Stop making music at me, he grumbles, then barely nods. Fine. Izuku watches this like a meteorologist watches a sky trying very hard to storm, but choosing not to. He adds an entry he doesn't show Bakugo yet. Entry 24. Strength that refuses to flinch is a tool I borrow when mine shakes. He tucks the green notebook into his shirt. He makes himself weigh what a human weighs. The plant breathes like a chest filled with rules. Yellow lines on the floor. Signs with pictograms that learn to shout politely. Tanks like sleeping whales. The manifold 6 cylinders, braided hoses, a forest of gauges wears steel like dignity. The epoxy tank is a fat drum that knows heat like math. Once the reactants meet, the cure is a clock with teeth. You keep it where it wants to be. Otherwise, it pouts and foams and makes smoke that calls ambulances. Sato is queen here. She wears a hard hat like a crown and reads gauges like gossip. We begin the pressure test, she says. Step cadence, Bakugo, that's you will settle at 2 counts per valve. I will point. You will turn. You will not dawdle. You will not sprint without reason. Midoriya monitor. Do not touch unless I say. Happy, Izuku says, delighted to be given choreography instead of prophecy. The first 10 minutes are the kind of boring that keep cities from becoming documentaries. Sato points. Valve 1, half. Half, Bakugo repeats, turning. He always turns right to get to half because he is learning consistency. Jiru's beat is a soft click in his ear. Izuku's metronome quietly aligns its heart with Sato's finger. Tanaka hums a stupid song that makes pipes happier. It is not scientific, but the manifold seems to like it. At 15:59, Hatsum's portable clock chirps friend contentedly. At 1600 hours, the chirp dies. So does the plant's clock on the wall. So does the NTP heartbeat on a panel that is supposed to be boring. The room's humming does not stop. It disciplines. The corridor arrives, not as a stripe, but as a curtain pulled over the plant and 2 blocks beyond. Everything keeps doing what it was doing, like a man answering a doorbell without remembering who he invited. On Bakugo's wrist, the rail lead flicks amber. It vibrates. He does not curse out loud. He wants to. He breathes. He looks at Sato. Hold, she says. Nobody runs. Nobody touches the phone. The UPS knows its job. The UPS, the uninterruptible power supply, nods like a soldier. The panels smile like nothing is wrong. That's how you know there's a problem. Panels always ask for attention. Izuku tastes metal and method. The corridor's hum is different, hergless instead of corridor. Not a stripe to walk. A room to work in. Someone wants an hour. Someone wants to see if he can take it from people who will not scream loudly on camera. He goes green by doctrine and amber by rail and human by choice. Giru, he murmurs. Beat steady. On it. Bakugo, Sato says, finger like a conductor's baton, stay on me. We finished the manifold test on my count. Resins don't care about your feelings. Happy, Bakugo says, and his voice is a trigger he pulls on discipline. They move. Sato points. Bakugo turns. 2 counts per valve. He looks where he is going, not where he was. He listens to the beat, not to the hum trying to steal his seconds. The bracelet nags. He obeys Sato, not the jewelry. Izuku watches the gauges. He doesn't touch. He puts his hands behind his back and talks to the atoms only when he must. A hose wants to vibrate from an old kink. He asks it to save the fight for tomorrow. Minimal. Documentable. At 16:07, the manifold is safe. Tanaka signs a line on a form and slaps the paper with joy. One down, he says. The epoxy is the problem. Sato taps the drum. We're mid-cure, she says. The reaction is exothermic. It makes heat. We remove heat. The controller, she points, is a liar now. Bakugo eyes the heat exchanger, the pump, the return. We babysit? He asks, and the word would be condescension if his face weren't so serious. We parent, Sato corrects. You run to the 3 auxiliary valves when I point. Midoriya, you tell me the truth, not celebrity answers. We keep the temperature at 70. Not 69. Not 71. 70. Izuku nods. He wishes for 2 hands that are 8. He copies himself, not a person, a metrologist's clone that reads numbers and mirrors line of sight. He keeps its mind tied to his like a child's hand at a street crossing. He does not touch the reaction. He wants to. He could whisper to the polymers, slow a little. He could steal seconds from one link and give them to another and never show it on a log. He chooses not to because rules are most useful when they hurt. Bakugo runs. He moves like precision wants to learn swagger. Sato points, he turns. He doesn't blast valves open with explosions. He twists with hands that can measure a quarter turn by feel. Jiru's beat keeps his heart obedient. Hatsume's bracelet buzzes. He ignores it when Sato doesn't buzz. 70.4 Izuku says. 01, 2 count, Sato orders. 01 Bakugo echoes, 2 counts. The hum tests them. A slight stutter in the pump that shouldn't be. Izuku watches the sheltering UPS pretend to be perfect. He picks up Tanaka's stupid song and hums, not because the tank needs music, but because humans do. He feels the corridor press at the edges of the beat like a tide at a seawall. 70 Izuku says. The number is a soft target. They make it a verb. At 16:15, Tsukauchi speaks in their ears with a kind of calm that counts as air support. Citywide. Hergless in effect 2-block radius around plant. Street traffic at edges reports deja vu. Mask posted. An hour for the honest. No incidents yet. We are holding. Aizawa. You're green until the resin lies. Midoriya, if you go amber, say it out loud. Bakugo, if Midoriya goes amber, you do not get red by yourself. Bakugo grunts affirmative. He is sweating from not exploding. It is a new kind of sweat. He files it for later and keeps moving. The vigilante chooses now to be stupid. On the street outside the plant within the Hergless, they lay a note across the hood of a Park City inspector's car. Return the hour you bill in that awful tidy hand. They step into the corridor between frames, lay epoxy at wrist height on the inspector who is taking photographs of a crack in the sidewalk and, for once in the long history of bureaucracy, is exactly where the city needs him to be. Ichako sees the move from the corner of the block because she was walking a lane just for the pleasure of doing her job. Amber, she says on comms, because it is her favorite color when it means I'm already doing the right thing. Mask at my 10. I will talk first. Unache, Aizawa says, preemptive and resigned. I know, Ichako says, and walks like kindness with good shoes. The mask stiffens. They do not enjoy being confronted by politeness. They leave the epoxy gun under the inspector's wrist and prepare to skip. Bakugo hears Ichako's voice on the channel and nearly breaks his doctrine. His bracelet bites his bones for thinking too loud. 70.8 Izuku says, and the number is a leash that saves the street. 02, 2 counts, Sato says. Do not leave my plant. Bakugo turns. 2 counts. Small, he says through teeth. Through Izuku counters softly. Ichako reaches the inspector and no drama puts 2 fingers on the epoxy bead, holds it in place with gravity that would make a physicist applaud for the manners alone. You're okay, she tells the inspector. Don't move. I'm going to ask your wrist to be patient. The mask watches, irritated by the absence of stage. You are complicit, the voice says. I'm present, Ichako replies. There's a difference. 70 Izuku tells Sato. He lets himself smile. Bakugo hears it. The mask skips. Ichako doesn't. She lets the skip happen around her and refuses to be moved by a rhythm she didn't consent to. She keeps her fingers on the epoxy like a promise. Bakugo wants to go. The plant keeps him. He stays. He stays because staying is where strength goes when theaters burn down. 71, Izuku says. It shouldn't be. The cooling jacket does its job. Something else is leaning. Not the masked idiot. The Hergless is trying a second, smaller theft. Moment siphoned from heat capacity calculations, a fractional lie that will become a foam if unattended. Amber, Izuku says aloud. Doctrine. Rail. Permission. Sato, I'm going to give the thermocouples honest numbers for the next 60 seconds only. I won't touch the reaction. Granted, Sato says without turning. Tell me what the gauges should say. I'll make them true with valves, not magic. Izuku speaks to the sensors. Be right, he tells them. They agree. For 1 minute, the plant remembers it deserves precision even inside a thief's room. 70.3 he calls. 03, 1 count, Sato commands. Bakugo moves 1 count like he's carving a letter with his shoulder. He tastes the foam that won't happen and grins in spite of himself. Do the smallest true thing, he mutters. Fine. Small punches hardest. Write it on a t-shirt, Izuku says. Write it on your wall, Bakugo shoots back, and it's affection disguised as a punch. On the street, Achako finishes her calm craft. The epoxy bead sets against gravity's preference. The inspector blinks. Thank you, he says like a confession. The mask tries a speech. She refuses to be an audience. Go home, she tells them, not unkind. You're stealing practice from the people who make the city real. The mask hates that line because it holds. They step back, not through a skip this time, just a step like a person, which is a defeat in their religion. They vanish on the next blink. Not impressive. Achako takes a photo of the epoxy and the note for Tsukauchi and goes to get the inspector water because green is often hydration. At 16:58, the epoxy in the plant completes its cure at 70, like a homework assignment that wanted praise but will accept clean paperwork. The Hergless hum lowers like a throat with a swallowed word. At 1700 hours, Hatsume's clock chirps the way a bird returns to a windowsill and asks if anyone saved crumbs. The plant claps, which is to say Sato signs the log with a flourish, and Tanaka hoots and Bakugo slumps against a tank and refuses to admit he is tired from doing nothing loud. But Sato says to him. It is the kind of good you write on a report card and put on a fridge. You did not explode. You were faster than anyone else's patience. 70, Bakugo says, like he intends to name a dog. Izuku laughs. He cannot help it. He writes. Entry 25. Fast and small is a weapon. Let the loud be last. Tsukauchi convenes his after-action huddle in a room with bad coffee and better conclusions. Hergless was controlled, he says. Corridor reinterpreted. Our friendly engineer likes midday tests now. Nezu steeples pause. Lunch breaks or less defended. The mask is opportunistic, Momo adds. They posted a smug photo of the inspector's note. Comments are not friendly. But Aizawa says. Let them be unfollowed. Plant logs. Sato flips to the page with a 70 that looks like a halo. We stayed honest by choosing honesty, not by cheating. Midoriya corrected sensors with consent. The rest was valves and ugly little screws. Ugly screws are civilization, Tanaka says solemnly. Izuku files the doctrine with a grin. Bakugo pretends not to be pleased. Achako shows the photo. Inspector Hayashi, she says. He was exactly where the city needed him. He wants to come to the showcase and teach people how to file complaints that get answered. Invite him, Izuku says. Give him a table. Hatsume waves a tablet. I made a bracelet that bites harder. Bakugo. No, 4 voices say. Bakugo cracks a smile. Send me 2. Izuku's metronome ticks. The city breathes. The Hergless has edges now, no longer a rumor, a room with a doorknob they can sketch. Chronophage will hate that. Night. Wall. Pen. Izuku writes rules that sweat a little pride. 32, if thunder is available, make it earn the right to arrive. 33, borrow time only from yourself. Pay it back with rest. He stares at 33 until the reality of his body is a thing he can respect. He turns the metronome down. He lets being tired be real. He texts his mother. Soup. She replies with a photo of the fridge sticker row and a new one. I was a person today with a tiny drawn explosion next to it. Bakugo came for dinner. He didn't blow up my kettle. Izuku laughs out loud in a way that makes the room remember a boy with notebooks before he was a promise. He writes one last thing for Bakugo, underlined twice. 34, strength isn't the blast. It's the beat you held until nobody needed the blast. He'll show it to him when the timing is right. Timing is a room. He has learned to knock. Across the river, in a clean apartment with no decorations but a clock that is not on the wall, a man in a delicate suit watches the plant footage he was never legally allowed to have. He slows it. He speeds it. He watches a boy he thinks is blue, not be blue at all, just a person with a metronome and a friend who refused to explode out of respect for a number. Small doctrine, ha, he says, amused despite himself. Let's see if Small survives a maze. He writes on a card. Our maze hospital. He draws clean lines. He draws exits. He draws teeth. The case hums in a key that tastes like teeth if you could taste keys. Soon he tells it. We will ask a different question. Izuku sleeps. Bakugo does too, waking once because his hands remember turning and think they missed a count. He holds them still. He smiles, tiny, mean, happy. Tomorrow has valves. He will be faster than patients again. Hospitals keep time like temples keep silence. Clocks on every wall. Clocks inside pumps. Clocks hidden in charting software and memory and the way a nurse's hand knows when to turn a patient even if the second hand pretends not to move. It's not precision so much as a covenant. We will do the right thing at the right time and the right time will show up when called. Herglis folds an hour over Musatafu General and tries to make the covenant forget its lines. Not the whole building. Amaze Pediatrics 1 ICU pod, 2 med-surg corridors, the central pharmacy window, a stairwell that thinks it's a loop. From 1300 hours to 1400 hours, the city believes the hospital takes a lunch break it never asked for. Patients do not know what clocks know. Bodies keep their appointments. Izuku is already on site for a civic practicum. Medical follow-up when Hatsume's box goes from chirp to polite absence. Jiru's metronome finds the bone, steady as the promise on a wristband. His ear blinks amber. Aizawa's voice arrives without apology. Green rail by default. We live in the chain of care. Chief nurse is your scene lead. Midoriya, say amber out loud if you must touch instruments. No touching people unless asked and then only like you're borrowing the hands you wish you had. Happy Izuku says, already turning human weight into a uniform. Recovery girl is in the building, perched to triage like a benevolent hawk. Tsukauchi stands with a house supervisor and a legal pad that will become 3 reports and 1 useful rumor. Aizawa appears with a visitor badge in that particular posture that tells kids not to try him and tells adults they're already forgiven for being tired. Rolls he says, crisp. Chief Nurse Takahashi commands. Midoriya. Instrumentation truth. Achako. Lifts transport, gentle first, speed only when it's asked for. Iida. Flow and lines keep lanes open, make politeness contagious. Todoroki. Climate support. Niku and pharmacy temple arms get your attention before they ask. Kaminari. With Biomed UPS Health, no heroics. Momo. Forms consent, logs, chain of custody. Jiru. Rhythm net for staff no panic, just beat. Hiroshima. Doors and wedges the humankind. Zero. Signage and soft barriers. Bakugo runner. Do not explode. Hatsume clock friend V2, room scale. He glances at Izuku and, without blinking, adds, and nobody becomes the protagonist. We are a chorus. Array LEDs blink green in agreement like 100 tiny nods. The maze announces itself the way clean floors do. You slip for half a second and are embarrassed at your own momentum. A med-surg cart reaches the corner twice. The second time the nurse frowns because she remembers answering a call light that hasn't rung yet. The error insists a med was scanned at 1305 and 1305 because the time server refuses to learn plurals. The stairwell door from 4 South opens onto 4 South. Once. Twice. Then it behaves like a door, sheepish. Izuku goes green with his doctrine and amber with his lead. He finds Chief Nurse Takahashi in the center of the floor like someone who taught clocks to be polite. Midoriya she says, reading him and the room at once. You're my truth tech. You touch screens and pumps if and only if I say. You do not touch people. Yes he says, grateful for commandments. Permission to tag devices with visible elapsed time overlays for the duration. Define tag. Light only. No write back. A label that says this pump has infused for 1812 even if its internal clock thinks it's at 1749 or 1749 again. She considers exactly as long as a veteran's caution requires. Granted for pumps, monitors, pharmacy window, and med cabinets. Not for ventilators without respiratory sign-off. Niku only through charge. Copy. He taps his ear. Administering truth tags on lead's permission. To Momo, already at a rolling kiosk. Log field TT active with segment and device class. Added Momo answers, forms blooming like tidy flowers. Izuku writes light into gentle rectangles. Truth tag hovers above infusion pumps and bedside monitors and overlay no patient sees, unless they look for it, every nurse can, every doctor will if they're smart. It doesn't alter function. It doesn't bully. It says I will keep time with you, not for you. Gear threads a low metronome into the overhead paging off channel, no one hears music, everyone breathes together anyway. Iida sets cones where panic would love a corner. Zero tapes arrows around the looped stairwell door with a placard. Up this way for real. The maintenance guy laughs and leaves it. Reality loves a joke that works. In Niku, Todoroki cools the isolette room 1/2 degree and raises humidity 3 not because babies are fragile, but because the hour is rude and he refuses to let air be rude to children. He keeps the change within what the charge nurse would dial. He asks her first. She nods, approves, commands. Blue boy, you don't blow near my babies. He doesn't. He learns to be kind without spectacle in a place that has never once requested a poster. Kaminari sits with Biomed and a stack of UPS status screens like a kid minding a litter of kittens who all purr in different fonts. If one pretends it's happy, the tech mutters, that's the liar. Kaminari grins, unoffended by being assigned the unglamorous. I speak liar, he says, and listens. Bakugo runs. He runs papers to pharmacy because the window scanner thinks time is a temper. He runs fluids from central supply on Aizawa's count, not his twitch. He runs a wedge to Kirishima and a fan to respiratory and a coffee to a night shift nurse who just discovered it is still day shift. He does not explode. He looks like he wants to kiss 70 on the mouth when a syringe pump's tag flickers and Izuku calls, whole dose at true elapsed. Confirm with order. Saito would be proud. The maze tries a trick in ICU. Do code calls blip across overhead. Blue to room 12 and, a breath later, blue to room 12. It's the same call. The hour wants to make it twice. The physician pulls up both, frowns at the air's clock, which swears its truth twice. Aizawa's voice, calmer than central oxygen. Chain of care. Takahashi calls where legs go and where hands go. No hero runs because of an echo. Single blue to room 12, Takahashi confirms. Single team. Echako, transport backboard. Izuku, no touching the patient. Tag the monitor in 12, not the man. Todoroki, hallway temp to staff, remember coat's not cold, just awake. Yes, they answer, and the chorus moves like a practiced breath. Izuku steps into room 12's air, just the air, and writes a truth tag that hugs the monitor like a halo. It reads lead 293 BPM elapsed 412 where the built-in display, offended by Hergless, blinks 91 BPM elapsed 339 twice. The nurse doesn't look at Izuku. She looks at her patient and then uses the tag to check the rhythm she already knew with her hands. Lead is clean, she says. Not a code. Panic artifact. The hour mutters. The maze dislikes being ignored by the competent. In pediatrics, a mother feeds a toddler mashed soup on a schedule that has never cared about clock faces. The child laughs at the truth tag over the pulse ox's pink number. The mother kisses a forehead. The pink number stays true. The pharmacy window tries to duplicate a med order. Time stamp 1311 and 1311. The pharmacist shrugs at the trick and stamps one void duplicate because she is older than digital clocks and refuses to be impressed. Midoriya Takahashi says into the beat, pharmacy wants tags on their fridge and freezer visible elapsed hold time, plus heads up if Hergless lies about door open. Granted. Izuku prompts, doctrine. Granted, she says. Not on medication vials. On units only. The tags. The overlays sit over the appliance doors and speak in polite numbers. Todoroki gives the room a breath of cool exactly like a seasoned pharmacist would. The day remembers how to be boring in every way that keeps you alive. The maze pushes back, more clever now. In PICU, a baby's monitor claims a steady O saturation, while the baby's lips prefer less blue. The nurse frowns, looks at the baby first, always the baby, and then at the tag. The tag says O probe lost signal 017 ago. The built-in doesn't. Hergless stole 17 seconds of honesty from the device and wrapped it in numbers. Amber, Izuku says softly for himself, not the room. He wants to rescue the baby with power. He rescues the instrument instead. Probe off, he says to the nurse, who already has the tape in her hand. Already on it, she breathes. The probe goes back. The baby's number and mouth agree. A mother exhales sobs like a truce. Aizawa appears at Izuku's shoulder exactly long enough to be counted and then evaporates into the hall. Teacher in a blink, Jiro murmurs on the channel, a smile you can hear. He is not there to be a hero. He is there to erase the scene, stealing part of his own students. He gives one look that says you're doing it right. Keep being a background character, and the urge to thunder dies without feeling scolded. Izuku writes a line on his wall in his head that he will put in light later. 35, in a hospital, the smallest true thing is the truth of vitals, correct instruments, before you dare to touch a life. The maze has a villain sense of drama. It tries one more trick. The stairwell loop feeds a porter back to the same floor with a blood bank cooler that technically must be in her 3 minutes ago. The porter is competent. The cooler is tagged with truth. The hour is smug. Iida meets him at the stair with laminated signage and a smile like a wedge. This way is faster, he says, and it is, because he opened a service elevator lane 5 minutes ago, with Ciro's tape and Momo's notice to facilities. The porter blesses bureaucracy and chooses the real shortcut. The blood meets the surgeon's hands without needing a speech. Bakugo runs the cooler the last 10 yards because the runner position doesn't always mean valves. Sometimes it means legs. He does not explode. He takes the handle from the porter like a relay baton and remembers to say nice one instead of move. The porter grins. The day stays held. The vigilante tries the hospital doors and decides Hergless isn't flattering on them. They post from outside. An hour for the honest. Saved. The comments stink. The hospital's own social feed posts Takahashi's line, we stayed honest by choosing honesty, and gets 1,000 quiet hearts. Tsukauchi leans against a column and scribbles. Chronophage is measuring distributed cognition, he says to Aizawa. He's clocking how an organization holds time if you steal its wristwatch. Aizawa doesn't blink. Then we keep wearing each other like watches. Poetic, Tsukauchi murmurs. Sleep deprived, Aizawa corrects. 13:59 arrives with the shy shamelessness of a cat returning after knocking something off a shelf. Hatsume's box chirps. Jiru fades the beat. The hospital shrugs and continues to be what it always was. Production of ordinary miracles at scale. Chief Nurse Takahashi signs 3 logs and shakes Izuku's hand once in a way that counts as a pin on a map he will look at when he needs to remember who he is. You can come back, she says. You don't get to glow, and you don't get to monologue. You can bring your truth stickers. Agreed, he says, warm with the pride that is allowed. Recovery girl steals the last word because elders should. And you will rest, she says, poking his sternum like a checkbox. Borrow time only from yourself. Pay it back before morning. Yes, ma'am, he says, guilty and obedient. Aizawa sweeps the group with a look and a sentence that will end up on Izuku's wall. The procedure is louder than your urge to save. Bakugo pretends he didn't hear it and writes it on his thigh in Sharpie. Debrief, bad coffee, good conclusions. Ergless, hospital variant. Targeted organizational timing. Avoided life support directly. Attempted to degrade instrument honesty. Counter. Truth tags, overlay only, Jiru's rhythm net, chain of care discipline. Outcome. No harm events. 2 near misses caught by look at the patient first doctrine plus tags. Vigilante. Kept outside by architecture and apathy. Sato stops by on her way back to the plant and slaps a 70 on Izuku's notebook for the joke. You kept it small where it mattered, she says. I like you better when you're boring. He beams. Me too. Tsukauchi tears a page from his notes and slides it to Aizawa. Later works invoices cross-referenced with a private courier's cooler, runs to the hospital's telecom room over the last month. Our engineer didn't touch life support, he says. He touched clocks. Through a door nobody guards because it's labeled this is only the internet. Momo's fingers fly. I'll draft a city memo, clock discipline in hospitals. Telecom closets are critical care. Nezu approves with a squeak that means budget request disguised as apology. Izuku adds to his green notebook. Entry 26. Chain of care, chain of command when seconds lie. Entry 27. If you must intervene, intervene at the seam where human judgment meets machine habit. Entry 28. Tag truth, don't drag fate. He will put them on the wall in light that doesn't wake neighbors. Soup. Inko listens like a person who does not require metaphors to love you. He tells the stairwell joke. She laughs in that soft way that redeems signage. He tells the Piku moment very carefully. She closes her eyes once and opens them with a steady yes. On the fridge. Another I was a person today sticker joins the row. She draws a tiny stethoscope on this one. Bakugo's kettle sticker keeps its little explosion. The line of small squares looks like a calendar that decided to celebrate showing up. He writes the wall lines before sleep, letting the plaster warm beneath each rule. 35. In a hospital, the smallest true thing is the truth of vitals. Correct instruments before touching lives. 36. The procedure must be louder than your urge to save. 37. Tag truth. Don't drag fate. 38. Wear each other like watches. Hold time for one another. He underlines 36 twice and 38 once. He turns the metronome down to where only bones hear it. He practices rest like a citizen. The cross down, a man with 2 watches rewinds feeds he shouldn't have. He watches a blue boy refuse to be a protagonist, a tired teacher turn a class into a machine, a hospital choose boring with the fury of professionals. He takes a pen and writes Our Maze Hospital on an index card, then draws a line through it. Not failure. Data. Beneath, he prints Second Son Musatafu 1900 hours and draws a circle around grid D. He opens the case. It hums like a choir learning an uglier song. Let's see how your city likes 2 noons, he tells the hum. Small doctrine under a big sky. He closes the case. He smiles. He sleeps. Izuku does too, unaware of the circle, aware of the next soup. The city practices breathing. The chalk waits. Nezu calls it an aquarium because names tame things. Our loader calls it a box because bolts and gaskets don't care about poetry. Hatsume calls it Glass Ghoster 1.0 because marketing helps budgets. On the sign-off form, Momo writes. UA translucent field observation chamber and underlines observation 3 times for the lawyers. It's a room inside a room. 3 cm laminated glass on all sides, a honeycomb floor, ports for air that doesn't go anywhere, a halo of sensors that listen to light pretending to be patient. No nullifiers. No disassembly. This is not that accident dressed in varnish. This is a mirror that wants to take notes. Izuku stands outside the aquarium because outside is also a posture. Objective, Nezu says, tail a metronome. If Hergla strains the fabric, we should be able to see the strain photoelasticity polarization tricks, acoustic ghosts. If you are a better metronome than anything we own, we'll be able to calibrate to you. Aizawa scans the sign-offs, eyes flat. Objective 2, he says. We don't try to build better corridors. We don't make a toy the commission wants to aim at a city. Objective 2 is non-negotiable recovery girl lads, cane-like punctuation. The commission rep smiles professionally. We're only here to ensure responsible. Spreadsheets Nezu finishes, sunny. Of course. Hatsum pats the glass. We seeded the laminate with micro-stress lines, she tells Izuku. When anything is root to time, the glass will gossip. You will stand near the box, not in it, and be charming at a fixed cadence while we take pictures. Charming. Izuku says, amused. Blink, she says. At exact intervals. You're a clock that apologizes. Also, she points to a fiber spool mounted like a crown on the top frame. We're running a loop of glass through the chamber because Herglas loves glass. If it hums, we'll hear it in the fiber. Giru plugs in her rig. I lay the click under the lab speakers. We don't need you to be a statue. We need you to be boringly rhythmic. I'm very good at boring and rhythm, Izuku says, and it's not a joke. He opens the green notebook. Entry 29. Build mirrors that refuse to flatter. He underlines refuse. They stage like adults. Fire pole in reach, paramedic on standby, a hard stop word everyone agrees on. Freeze. If anyone says it, everything halts and the lab becomes a hallway again. Hatsum rolls her shoulders. All systems green. Our loader nods inside a helmet that looks like it could sue a storm. Glass stress baseline is boring. Giru clicks the beat into the room. Click. Click. Soft as confidence. Izuku stands near, not in, hands at his sides, so every muscle knows this isn't theater. On the third click, he blinks. On the sixth, he breathes deeper. On the 12th, he counts backward in his head in a language he taught himself that has no numbers. Hatsum's screens draw out rainbows from the glass photoelastic fringes that map strain like tree rings. They don't move. Good. The fiber loop hums like a cat that hasn't decided if it likes you. Good. Now Nezu says, voice low, we invite the city to be rude. It doesn't need invitation. At 11:17, somewhere in Musatafu, a corridor blinks over a side street because chronophage likes lunchtime too. It's small. It's enough. Hatsum's fiber loop shivers a half tone. The glass throws a faint tilt in color, the sort of shift only instruments and fussy artists notice. Giru leans into the board, layers a counterbeat under the click. The lab breathes with it. Do you feel it? Aizawa asks Izuku without looking up. I feel what the glass feels, Izuku answers. Which is embarrassed. Hatsum snorts. Glass hates being seen being bent. Momo flags the frame. Mark. Ghost 0.1 external. They wait. The tilt fades. The cat hum returns to indifferent. Nezu scratches his chin. Again. At 11:31, the lab lights don't flicker, but the fiber does a microscopic phase skip that would be nothing to a phone call and everything to a clock. The glass shows a prettier ghost, two faint rainbows side by side where one should be. Jiru's click keeps everyone in the second they agreed on. It's walking along fiber, Hatsum whispers. Chronophage loves a neat highway. Our loader taps a pen against his clipboard. The laminate's showing doubling, he says. Two stress states trying to be the same moment. The palimpsest Momo murmurs, already drafting the caption. Nezu's smile sharpens. Now we ask our metronome to be rude politely. Midoriya. Izuku nods. Amber, he says out loud. Doctrine before trick. Permission to hold a steady phase inside the lab so the glass has something stubborn to argue with. Granted, as Aizawa says, tone flat, trust wearing a disguise. Izuku writes a stillness into the air. Not a stop. A discipline. The glass recognizes it like a person recognizes a wall they can lean on. The doubling tries to overlay the stillness, fails graciously, and slides around it. Hatsum screens pour rainbows, Ghost 0.2. The fiber sings a little higher, as if an instrument tuned itself to be better company. Okay, Nezu says, pleased. We can see it when it visits. Visitors are nice, recovery girl says. We are not hosting them forever. Izuku adds to the notebook. Entry 30. If the city misbehaves, give it something manner to push against. They test the mirror idea the other way. What does Izuku look like to glass when he samples seconds? It's a philosophical problem wrapped in a lab tantrum. If he announces when he is about to be impolite to time, maybe the glass will gossip. Amber, he says softly. 4 sample sweep at millisecond spacing, each declared, no retention. Aizawa. Do it. He doesn't move. He declares 4 attentions in a row and lets each evaporate. The glass catches the after images in polarization, 4 faint silhouettes of the same boy with freckles, arranged like a motion study. They are not him. They are consents he gave to reality to notice he was being careful. Hatsum does not breathe. Ghosts, she whispers. You are leaving ghosts when you choose to be more than 1 second wide. Only if I write permission on the wall, Izuku says, uneasy and honest. Momo marks it ghost. Consent and draws a boundary box in bold around the term. Aizawa doesn't blink. Good. You don't do that in hallways. You do it where the glass will tattle. Understood, Izuku says, and means it in his bones. He writes on his wall later. 39, if I must be wide, I must be witnessed. Edmerit sends over the observation camera from the afternoon he first learned how not to be at all. They don't send the nullifier. They do send apology cookies. The camera is a brick that remembers math. Momo coordinates chain of custody like a court orders love. Jiru extracts the raw sensor read, not the compressed video, but the light the camera saw and then forgot to keep honest. Hatsum routes that light through glass ghoster with a click under it like a spell. On the screen, they watch Tuesday die and reassemble into a boy whose mother still stirs soup. They watch the light scream politely into a number and the number forget how to represent screaming. They watch rainbows the glass now knows how to translate. Here is where the field decided to mean Izuku. Here is where the room decided yes. The Chako is there in the back of the lab because she doesn't like leaving him alone with Tuesdays. She keeps her hands in her pockets. She keeps her eyes gentle. Aizawa says, and Jiru obeys. The image is a smear like a signature the camera never meant to capture. It holds. Our loader clears his throat. So, the day you changed. Wrote a stress memory into any sensor that could be made to confess. And Herglis is writing a lighter version of that in our glass right now. Same script, different hand, Nezu says. Our engineer is not a god. He is a thief of seconds and signatures. Tsukauchi, who has been a quiet wall for the testing, flips his notebook. If we can show a judge that Herglis leaves a unique rainbow in glass and fiber, we can get wider warrants, traffic cams, building panels, even fiber nodes. We won't know who he is. But we'll know where he stood to watch. The commission rep opens their mouth. Aizawa raises one finger without looking and the mouth remembers freeze. Izuku is not sure if he's relieved or nauseous. He stares at the paused smear that used to be his ribs learning new arithmetic. He doesn't want to be a method for anyone else's hunt, even the good one. He also wants chronophage to stop. The Chako leans close enough to be counted. You okay? I'm practicing, he says, and it's not a joke. It's a vow. He adds to the notebook. Entry 31. Use my ghosts against bullies, not against civilians. Entry 32. Every witness must be informed if I made them a mirror. Momo reaches for the pen and adds. Entry 32B. Put it in writing. Public document. Nezu beams. A policy. Delicious. They're on a phase sweet. Nezu's idea translated by Hatsum into a set of tones the fiber likes. A chirp goes out on the loop. The loop returns a curve like a shy confession. In the lab, the curve is neat. In the hallway outside, it's slightly noisy. On the campus fiber backbone, it's noisy and late and then noisy and on time in a way that maps the edges of Herglis's footprints across the grid. Trackable, Tsukauchi says, almost scandalized. He left tread. Engineers always do, Sato says from the doorway, because she arrived when the word fiber was uttered 3 times like a summoning. Glass remembers hands. Hatsum overlays the lab curve and the plaza curve from the showcase. The shapes rhyme. At the corners, a bulge, a signature like a fingerprint. She circles it. Second son, she murmurs. Nezu's ears turn. Explain. Hatsum points at the bulge. A light source the grid believes in so much it flinches before it arrives. At the showcase, it was small, a balloon arch almost falling, a bolt almost failing. This bulge is bigger in Grid D's recent data. She pulls up a city map with colored breadcrumbs. A yellow ring sits over Grid D like a wedding band. Do noons, Izuku says, remembering the card the man wrote in a room he cannot see. The hair on his arms rises out of courtesy. He wants to cast shadows twice. Aizawa doesn't swear. He makes the air around him sturdier. When? Tonight. Hatsum hazards. 1900 is his favorite theater. Green rail until we see teeth, Aizawa says. But we stage. Nezu flicks a paw at a whiteboard. Stations. Power Sato, Todoroki. Water Tanaka, Momo. Crowd Jiru, Iida, Siro. Medical recovery, Achako, Kaminari with Biomed. Midoriya ops. You are a wall, not a sun. You hold tempo. You do not go wide unless I throw chalk at you. Accepted, Izuku says, grateful for the harpoon of a plan. He writes on the wall before he leaves the lab. 40, if the enemy invents a sky, we stay on the ground. 41, when a second sun rises, cast one shadow together. Achako taps 41 with a finger. We hum, she says. He hums the beat under his breath. The commission rep corners Izuku on the way out and tries to shape their mouth into a policy. Mr. Midoriya, if your consent, ghosts can be used for evidentiary. Izuku stops. He can be rude politely. We will publish our truth tag protocol as a public document, he says, voice steady. In it, you will find that any mirror we make will be announced and logged and visible. We will not make secret witnesses out of glass in people's bedrooms. They blink, recalibrating their face. We appreciate transparency. Good, he says. So do we. Aizawa's hand appears on his shoulder like a chapter break. Walk, he tells Izuku, and Izuku obeys the oldest law on campus. When a tired teacher says walk, you walk. Nezu's going to put your ghosts on a leash, Aizawa says as they cross the courtyard. Good leash. Public. Loud. Annoying to villains and to my inbox. Thank you, Izuku says. You're not a method, Aizawa adds, blunt and quiet. You're a kid who writes rules on a wall and keeps them. Izuku breathes. The metronome clicks like a gate counting wheels. Tonight, Aizawa says, looking at the sky that will host a second sun, we don't make it a war. We make it a Tuesday. Izuku grins despite the wait. I like Tuesdays. Earn one, Aizawa says, and vanishes into paperwork. He has soup early. Inko stirs and watches the sky like weather is a person she knows. He tells her about the glass that gossips and the ghosts that only exist if he signs for them. She nods as if he told her he cleaned his room. He shows her 41. She adds a sticker to the fridge that reads we hum and draws a little sun that looks like an egg. Be back for late soup, she says. He kisses her cheek because some rituals put armor on your ribs. On the way out, he flips the metronome in his head up one notch. He is a wall. He is not a sun. Across town, a man with two watches stands in a plaza and looks up at nothing and smiles. In a glass case that hums like a choir that wants new sheet music, a bulge in the curve finishes learning its line. The city rehearses a new shadow. The lab remembers rainbows. The glass is ready to tattle. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you all are enjoyed this video. If you do, please leave a like, share and subscribe. So let's end this video here. Until then, see you in next video.